We want to welcome you to Navigating Life's Challenges, Understanding Anxiety Across Generations and Contexts. And we appreciate you getting up early on a Saturday to be here, really to make an investment in yourself, to prioritize you and your mental health, and to be able to learn more about how you can help yourself and help others as well. We have a great day ahead of us, and we are looking forward to learning, to sharing, to growing, and being inspired and challenged on today. I'm Lamont Ross. I'm the minister here at the Marcellus Avenue Church of Christ, and just want to welcome you. If you are not a part of the Marcellus family, we are glad that you chose to be here. And to our members, we're also delighted and excited that you chose to make this investment in yourself as well. I want to begin with a word of prayer, and then we'll do some acknowledgments, and we'll introduce our speaker for this opening session. Let us pray. God in heaven, how we love you, and we thank you so much just for the blessings of life, health, and strength. And thank you for bringing us together for this workshop as we delve into anxiety and its many facets and forms and the context in which we experience it. We thank you for our presenters. We thank you for those who have worked so hard to plan this time, and we thank you for every attending. Ask your blessings upon this day. Ask your blessings upon the households that are represented here. Help us to take what we learn here, apply it to our lives, but also deposit it in the lives of others as we have opportunity. In the name of Jesus we pray, amen. So today we want to start off by thanking our planning committee. And many of them are not in here, but those who were part of planning today's event, if you are in the auditorium, if you would just stand or wave your hand. We had a great team. A lot of hard work has gone into this, and it's just good to have great people on the team. We also want to thank those who have donated for the items in the bags that you have, some literature and some goodies as well. Beacon Mental Health and Wellness Center, Beulah Family Medical Clinic, Craig Howell with the National Alliance of Mental Health, the Greater Dallas Senior Blue Book, the Hephzibah Visiting Clinicians, and Miss Jenny Sue with Jenny's Beauty Supply in Cedar Hill, and she's actually here, and so we like have her stand up. And we appreciate the contribution that you have made. And 5 Points Nursing and Rehabilitation of DeSoto, and we just thank them. I mentioned we have some great presenters. You'll get a chance to meet them in your workshops, but just want to call out their names. For our adult workshops, we have Dr. Jandel Crutchfield, who's a member here. We have Dr. Titus Hamlet, who's married to Jasmine Aldrich Hamlet. We have Jock Roberts. Is he in the room? And we have Dr. Paula London Scott. We are also excited because we have many of our young adults and college students who will be sharing in the youth portion of today. And we thank them. Hampton Aldridge, Justice Bedford, Erica Fulbright, Elijah Lane, Megan Manning, Rihanna Mathis, Keyshawn Robinson, and Brenna Rusk. We are so blessed as a congregation, and we're really intentional about making this an intergenerational effort. We wanted there to be something for everyone of all generations, and we wanted people from every generation involved in the planning and the program. And so this is really a preview of something that we are planning for next year. And so if you like today, stay tuned, and we're sure that if the Lord lets us see it, you'll like what we have planned for next year as well. At this time, I want to introduce our keynote speaker, Angela Belton. She is a bilingual licensed professional counselor here in Dallas. She graduated from Jarvis Christian College with a Bachelor in Business Administration, and she has served as a teacher in various school districts, including Wichita Falls, DISD, or Dallas, and Terrell. She received her dual master's in school counseling and professional counseling from Amberton University, and she has 15 years of experience working in this mental health field with children, adults, couples, and families. Currently, she works at Paul Quinn. She also works at Christian Works for Children, which is where I had the opportunity to meet her when I was doing my counseling hours there. She's also utilizes some online mental health platforms, some EAP programs, and she owns her own private practice, A Beautiful Mind Consulting. Angela serves her community as a volunteer. She has 2 adult children, and she enjoys the outdoors, traveling, spending time with her family. Now, I think this part is important because we're more than our jobs. We're more than our professions. And sometimes I think we forget to enjoy the journey along the way. And so we're glad that she consented to be with us on today. And without further delay, let us welcome our keynote speaker, Ms. Angela Belton.
See if this is working. Can you guys hear me? Buenos dias, good morning. So we're going to start, first of all, just to let you know my style, my presenting style. I'm very versatile. I don't like to bore people. I don't like to go to places and be bored. So we're going to make this interactive, okay? So since we're at church, I want you guys to say, yeah, right, just respond if something clicks, because this is a learning community, and I like to always, everywhere I go, I like to learn, okay? So first of all, thank you so much for being here. We're gonna have a Q&A, like 5 to 10 minutes at the end. So if you have any questions, make sure you write them down so we can answer all your questions today, and if we cannot, I'll take your papers with your email address or phone numbers, and I'll be very glad to send you the answers that you're seeking. Okay, so my goal is to be a resource to leave you today with tools and things that you can do starting today if you're going through any type of struggle or any type of situation for yourself, a loved one. So that's the kind of learner I am, and that's the kind of teachings I like for my guests and my clients to experience for me as well. Okay, so we're going to start. Any questions so far? We good? All right, so let's get started. So we call this presentation, the topic I was given was navigating life challenges. We can go to the next slide, please. So I'm going to tell you a little overview of my life. This is a beautiful story. And this is the way I want you to feel about your story. That's why I started with that, with the beauty. You know how social media always we present the best of us? We never put like the struggles or the tears or the bad days. We don't put that. That is kind of like in the background. So I'm going to tell you the beautiful story that started when I was born, 1976. You guys do the math. But I'm a kid at heart, okay? So it doesn't matter what the outside says. So I was born and raised in Colombia in 1976. If you guys know, Colombia is a country that was very known for some illicit activities. And we were put on the radar because one of our top, I wouldn't say leaders, but I would say characters, very interesting characters. He decided to put us in the map as to be the biggest drug dealer in the world, okay? So that's how people know Colombia. But also we're known for our coffee, for our flowers, for our people, for our the beach, and all these really places that look like paradise. So if you guys never been, I invite you to come. It's safe. It's safer now. So as you can imagine, that's why I put violent country, because just like most of us, we don't live in a bubble, okay? So everywhere you go, there's gonna be violence. I'm the third child of 4 siblings, and I grew up in a 2-parent household. So a lot of people say, oh, wow, that's amazing. But I'm going to tell you the background in a minute, okay? As I started to grow up, I put all my energy and all my, I guess, frustrations, traumas, struggles, whatever my child mind was telling me to do, into something productive. And that, for me, was sports. So I was a basketball player since I was 11 years old, and I started at a very early age, and that consumed my time, and I put all my passion into that, okay? So as I'm telling my story, I want you to think about how your story starts to unveil, because this is a reflection. I'm a reflection of your story, okay? Because we all have that powerful story. And yeah, so I went on to play for my middle school, my high school, my city, even my country, and all that work paid off because I landed a scholarship to attend Jarvis. Who would have thought a girl from Colombia will go to Jarvis, right? And I spoke 0 English. So you guys can imagine I'm playing basketball and my coach is over there, Angela! And it was so fun to me. Those 4 years were, I would say, the highlight, besides other things, but that's how my life started, and it was amazing. So that was a very good experience. And your community, you guys greeted me and embraced me like your own. And I really love this country for this, okay, for that, because I really felt at home. And not even, I will be at home, my own physical home, and I wouldn't even feel this accepted. So I felt like I gained another family. So thank God, because God always provides whatever we lack. And he knew that I didn't have my family with me or my friends. I left it all. And then I was embraced with a big community, okay? So, and after that, it's been thousands and thousands of great stories. So I went to Jarvis, got my business, my bachelor's degree in business. I became Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Is there any sorors in the house? Where is Kiwi? Okay, represent. Yes. Right after college, I got married, young and dumb. Okay, kids, listen. Kids, any kids here? Don't marry young. But I fell in love with the guy that I was dating in college, and his family welcomed me in also as a daughter. And so they won me over. They won me over, and I started a family. I currently have 2 children, an almost 25-year-old daughter, Adriana, and I have a 21-year-old son, Jerry, okay, Jerry the third. And they're the love of my life. Miss Brenda can testify to that. And so, but unfortunately, 10 years later, after my marriage, I was forced to get a divorce because I became a survivor, first a victim, and then a survivor of domestic violence. Thank goodness, because of therapy, I was able to get out of that cycle. And I really owe a lot of that, besides God, to the community. If we don't reach out, how people know that we need help? So that's what I did with the community. And one of those big pillars for that recovery was Miss Brenda, my friend. And she'll tell you, we know each other for 20 years and we became best friends. But she was one of those people that helped me in my recovery. So I really thank her, because I'm here today with y'all because of her. Yeah, I didn't do all this on my own, guys, I promise you. And as life went on, I became a teacher. From teacher, I was offered a job as a school counselor. From a school counselor, I got the opportunity to be an LPC. And I was like, wow, all these doors are opening. So I knew that I wasn't done. There was so much more to be done on my end. And I was not gonna let my life struggles to destroy it for me and my kids. So I just moved on. And currently I work at Paul Quinn College. I'm their mental health counselor for a lot of young adults. Still work for Christian Works. Are you still there? You left? Okay. Well, we always welcome counselors to stay. And like our presenter Lamont said, also started A Beautiful Mind Counseling in 2021. So I love it. And I did this because I truly believe this is my passion. I was really born to do this. But we can go to the next slide. But how do we know behind that beautiful story, right? So think about your story. Behind all this beautiful story, look all the struggle that it is behind it, okay? So I just name a few, like the ones it was popping in my mind, because I have done this exercise over and over and over again. And that's the thing with recovery. You don't do it one time or two times. You have to do it forever, for the rest of your life, once you learn it. Because at the end of the day, we are a product of our traumas and our struggles. So, and we learn by intuition. And sometimes we repeat the patterns that we grew up seeing in our parents, not knowing that they were wrong, but that's what we did, right? They would say, well, my mama said, my daddy did, and they were like, well, that's how I'm gonna do it too. But it comes a point where it's not working and you say, this is not working. I gotta do something else. Mama, this used to work. But then you have to figure out, that's when we start gaining that consciousness and say, I'm now my own person. I'm now go through this and I process things in a different way, okay? So those are some of my struggles, and I have some questions for you. You know that, of course, we're not gonna answer out loud. This is for you to process. Can you relate to this story? So I want a yes, no, thumbs up, thumbs down. There's a lot of similarities. Sometimes I even feel that we are like brothers and sisters, like we grew up together. When I'm meeting with my clients, I say, did you grow up in my house or something? Because that's my story. So that to tell you how alike we are. You know, we're more alike than different. So if you relate, I want you to, today, when you go home, analyze your story. Do a timeline and just go through where you are today, but look all the things that you had to go through to get where you are, okay? And I'm gonna tell you why that's so important. Because your life story is the most powerful lesson that you will learn from. You can have people like me here inspiring you, motivating you, telling you all these beautiful and bad things, but the one that really matters is your own, right? Because you're the author. You will create it. Just like I created mine, you will create yours. So that's why it's so important. And how did you cope? You know, think about how did I deal with this? Did I do my own thing? Did I copy my parents? Did I ask friends? Did I give in to some addictions? Because life is life, right? We're not perfect, and we're always like in constant growth. So think about those coping mechanisms that you acquire throughout your life to deal with your struggles. But it makes me really think, what would have happened if I didn't have these struggles? Do you think I will be here today? If I didn't go through a violent country, a violent parents that had also violent tendencies, a violent husband, or all these challenges that you can see, would I be here today? So that means we need the struggles, right? We need them. So I want you today is to embrace our struggles, embrace our challenges, because just like the good moments are needed, we also need the tough ones to build us up. Okay, if you can relate, raise your hand. Awesome, awesome. And who was always there? For me, it was God. I can testify to Miss Brenda. Miss Brenda, I don't know how I did this, okay? I don't know. There's some days that I'm blank. I'm like, how did I do it? I don't remember. So who else? God was probably lifting me in a cloud, and I was like, oh, Lord, cry. But he did it. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here, okay? And according to this story, I really should be dead today. I really should be dead. If I didn't have the guidance, the people, the faith, the family, and any other support in my inner strength, I really should be dead. But here I am, kicking. We're kicking, right? Do we give up? We don't give up. Okay, we can go to the next slide, and I'm going to speed it up so we can, what happened? You can go to the next one. I think that one was a typo. Keep going. If not, I'm going to go through I'm good. I have my handy dandy cheat sheet. So it's good to have an extra one. Oh, there you go. So our objective, right, our purpose, that's our mission, to find what is the objective and the purpose of our spirit, right? The spirit that lives inside of us. What is it that we want to become? So I put these were some sentences that when I was doing this project for you guys, that just kind of resonate with me, okay? So I'm going to read them very quick. Life challenges can feel daunting, but we are never alone in our struggles. We've been reminded to lean on God for strength, to trust in his plan, and to find joy and hope even in adversity. Do you guys agree? By staying connected with God and each other, we can navigate the roller coaster of life with grace, courage, and unwavering faith. I love the way they use roller coaster, because that's what life is. It's a roller coaster. It's never a straight line and you go perfect from A to B, C. Oh no, it's A, Z, G, W. Oh, now I'm going up and now I'm going down. Oh, where do I go now? You just never know. You just never know. So together, we assure one another that through every trial, God is working behind the scenes for our good. May we continue to uplift one another, finding joy, peace, and purpose as we walk through this journey of faith and unity. Let's hold and hope and joy, remembering that God has a magnificent plan for each of us. I'm sorry, excuse my accent and bad reading. Our challenges don't define us, but rather they're stepping stones toward his greater purpose in our lives. Isn't that beautiful? It makes me appreciate my struggles. I need those stepping stones to become who I am today. So instead of saying, oh my gosh, my life is so horrible, girl, sit down, let me tell you my story, okay? Now you're like, no, I was blessed to have this person here that made my life impossible, but what did I learn from that person, right? And those people that gives you the most struggles, they're masters. They're our teachers. They're here to teach us something. So for me, my parents, my ex-husband now, even my kids, anybody is your master. right? They're gonna teach you a lot. Next. Okay, so so that's what we're working on, okay? We're gonna understand our life struggles. Let's continue. So let's start to the nitty gritty, our bodies, right? So we all have this vessel, and the question is, how well do we take care of it, right? Because just like our cars, we take our cars to get detailed to the car wash and make sure it has this shiny color. But then our bodies, oh, I'm hurting, but it's okay. I'll wait to go to the doctor another time. It's okay, I have this headache, but you know what? It will go away. We really don't treat our bodies like we treat our cars, okay? So I'm gonna give you a little nuggets of like facts that I want you to either take a picture of it or write them down so you can start thinking, wow, that's a new perspective, or that's something I didn't know. Okay? So understand that we are emotional beings. We came here to feel. So those days that you're feeling overwhelmed, stressed out, Lord, why? Why? Remember that. Oh, I came here to do this. Okay, so I'm going to feel my feelings. We all have our birthright to feel our feelings. So don't say to somebody or believe when somebody tell you, shut up, don't cry, be a woman, be a man, be a big boy, be a big girl, because that's how we grew up, right? Listening to that lie. Big girls don't cry. Put your big pants on. And then we're like, what big pants? I don't have a big pants. I don't want to. I give up. But we did it anyways. So remember, now that we're passing on the torch to the new generations, we're going to teach them to feel their feelings, okay? That's what we're here on this earth to. Feelings are temporary. So those storms, guess what? They won't last forever. Have you ever been in a storm that lasts your whole life? Oh no, I can get up sad today. I put some happy music and I'll be like, woo, because I'm happy. And I'm like, oh, I feel better already, right? You go to the gym, you take a walk, and boom, the bad feeling is gone. So those are tricks, those are tips that I'm giving you, that whenever you're sad and you want to feel your feelings, cry, throw a tantrum, punch a bag, go for a run, dance, and boom, change your mood, okay? So the key is movement and change, like temperature. If I'm upset, take a cold shower. If you're hot, cold or hot, okay? Change temperatures and move. Those are very, very important tips. Your external body is always gonna reflect your internal. So always question any illnesses, any uneasiness, even your emotions. What is it that my body is trying to tell me? Why am I feeling like this? It's always a reason. So use your body as your compass, right? Because we always like, let me ask the doctor, let me ask Google, AI, ChatGPT, why am I feeling like this? How they know? They're not gonna know. So sit down in prayer and meditation and ask yourself, okay, body, what are you trying to tell me? You know, like really, really, why are we feeling like this? So I invite you today to stop reaching, looking for the key of the house outside your house. It's in your house. It's somewhere. Just go there and find it. And what do? We start, okay, I went to the kitchen first, and then I went to the bathroom. It should be over here, and then boom, you find it, right? So that's how we need to do too, when we don't know why we're feeling something or a pain. But all emotions are necessary to learn and grow. Why? Because we need day and night, right? We need hot and cold. So we just don't need all the way rosy, unicorn, pink flowers. Life, that would be so boring, right? We will be super bored if we don't have the adrenaline-driven stress of every day, right? You're like, oh, God, I need some adrenaline. Okay, let me send you a few problems for you to resolve. Oh, God will do that. So imagine that is happening to you for a reason, right? To practice. The more we practice, the better we get at it. Okay, so there's no good or bad emotions, they're just lessons. So always think about that. What is the lesson? And I already said that our bodies are temples, so we must treat them with the most respect. So for my young people, if you don't remember nothing today, just remember that, okay? It's very important that we treat our bodies with respect because it starts in childhood, in adolescence. That's when we start. And I'm really thankful that I started my journey as an athlete very young because till this day, if I don't go to the gym, guys, I feel like I'm going crazy, okay? It's like a need. Now I need all that explosion and expression of my energy to feel better and to sleep so much better. So let's develop those habits. I have learned that when we don't give our body what it needs, guess what? Your body's gonna take you out regardless. So I have had clients that say, oh, I'm so sick, blah, blah, blah. I say, well, take some time, go to the doctor. No, I'm okay. 2 weeks later, oh, I got the flu and I'm with COVID at home, I can't go to work. And I'm thinking, I told you, take that time off for you. But that's what the body does. So when your body's speaking to you, telling you rest, listen and rest because that's what you need. And that can be also analyzing when you're going somewhere and there's an accident, you got a flat tire. You know what? God is telling me, don't go. I'm just going to stay put. So instead of, oh, this traffic, scaring my nerves, we start listening. Oh, God is preventing me from something horrible that could happen to me. So I'm going to listen. And that actually happened to me this week. So I think we all get those lessons. And our body needs nutrients, exercise, rest, and maintenance. We kind of been talking about that. Observe what is telling the body's telling us. And the calmer we are, the better we can deal with problems, okay? Have you ever tried to see fish in water that it has like a lot of tide and is super muddy? Can you see the fish in the rocks? Can you see them? Why? Yeah, because that water is not calm, right? But what happens when you let all this water settle and then you go and you say, oh, I know these fishes were here, they're so cute. And then you find rocks and then you just find things that you could never imagine because you have to wait for things to settle. So settle your mind so then you can think clearly. You can find the things that you're looking for with a clear and calm mind. And for that, you can practice the breathing exercises that is in your handout today. I was reading the tips. That's a very, very good technique. And there's a book that I can recommend to you guys because every emotional problem is connected, every physical issue in our bodies is connected to an emotion. And you can find that in many books, but one of my favorite ones is Soul Speak by Julia Cannon. And any book on biofeedback or psychosomatic issues. So psychosomatics are pain caused by our mental, okay? So there's always a reason like rashes, hair loss, knee pain, all of that has a meaning and an emotion. So the more you learn these things, the better you're going to start figuring out, oh, it doesn't matter how many Tylenols I take. It's really, I need to go to the root of that emotion to fix it. And so that's where I work with my clients. We help to discover where are these physical illnesses coming from. And I'm going to tell you the number one thing, withholding your speech. When we stay quiet, when we hold grudges, when we're like, I'm not going to talk to her, who she thinks she is, right? And we just eating up all that venom, guys, that transforms into thyroid cancer. Then you can't speak. Then you start having problems somewhere here. See, so those don't happen by coincidence. So think about how much am I withholding? Because that's where those problems come from. So Guess what is my number one technique that I put all my clients to do? You need to write. You need to write all that stuff down. We won't have all of our lives, both of our lives together, for you to tell me. So I need you to start writing every day. Let it out. Let it out and let it go. Who cares? It's in the past. Let it go. Next. I'm going to start. I always say I'm going to go faster, and I don't go faster. But the next one I know is mine. Perfect. Mine. So this is another very common topic. I tell people when they tell me, oh, I have this anxiety and this depression, and I let them tell me all their spiel, right? And when they're done, I was like, okay, are you finished? Is there more? And when they're done, I said, okay, I want you to analyze who's in control of your body. Are you the captain, or is your mind the captain? And they're like, well, it's me. But how? You let in the fear guide your decisions. You let in self-doubt, not to go to an event that you needed to go, or to a job opportunity because you think you're not good enough, or what they're going to say. So who is really in control? And so we get to figure out that we've been listening to our minds, and we're not telling our mind, shut up. You know what? We're going to go, even though I'm fearful, but let's go. And we go. And some people, some of my clients tell me, it's not that easy. It's not that easy. I never said it's easy. I just said do it, even though it's hard. But you choose your heart. It's hard to change and move, but it's harder to stay in the same spot a year later and find out you haven't done nothing, right? That is hard. Because we are evolving beings. That's our nature, to grow and evolve. So our mind job, and it's not our mind's fault, because the mind is doing what it's supposed to be. Our mind is doing what it does, which is retrieve from memory. Oh, remember when we get angry, we stop talking to our husband because that's what your mama did. So do it. It works. And then you go and do it. And then big fights. And we're going to get divorced. You don't talk to me. And all of a sudden you figure out, why am I doing this? Why am I not speaking to my husband or to my partner when that's the only way that I can resolve it? Then we figured out, I've been just doing this by routine, habit, because somebody says so. So ask yourself, is this coming from me or is it coming from somebody else? Your answers. So your mind is going to do that. It's going to give you the past, the memory, the comfort. Girl, just eat a big pot of ice cream and you feel so much better. Really? And then you try to go to an event like, oh, this dress is kind of tight. I think it's shrink. I think it's shrinking. Something's wrong with that store. I'm not going back to that store. It's terrible clothing. You see how we deflect everything? We blame everything else but us, because we do not like to change. So think about all these nuggets I'm giving you. And our mind is not that it's bad. It's not like a bad kid or it's trying to punish us. It's just doing what it's supposed to, you know? So that's why every day, starting today, make a conscious effort to change something that you do it differently. If you brush your teeth with your dominant hand, do it once in a while with the other hand. Why? Because when you do that, you start creating new pathways in our brain. And you have heard that say that we only use I think 5% of our brains or in our lifespan. That's why. We use the same roads all the time that lead us to the same results that keep us unhappy. So let's do something different, okay? So I challenge you to start analyzing, what if it's something I can do differently today? And start creating, make your mind expand, be open-minded and say, you know what, I'm gonna listen to this crazy Colombian lady. I don't understand what she's saying, but I'm gonna try. And then you guys tell me if it worked or not, okay? Oh, goodness, this is funny. Yes. But yeah, that's how we learn new lessons. So don't do kind of like that drawing. Don't go through the the lines that are already formed there. Go through the middle, break the mold, be adventurous, and just do something different. Otherwise, that's what I tell my clients. You pay me to talk to you, to do changes, and you tell me that you don't want to change, you want to do the same thing. So I don't want to take your money just like that. I mean, I'll take it, but if you insist, but I don't want to. That's not what's best for you. So I really care about my clients, okay, guys? When I see somebody that is not moving, I let them go. I said, you need to go and experience another counselor, because I'm going to ask you, I'm going to hold you accountable. I'm going to ask you did you read the chapter? Did you do this? Did you do that? And if you say no, go back to the gym and keep working out. You're not doing what you're supposed to. I gave you homework. That's how I am. You can tell I'm an athlete. And our mind will always try to go to the past. So your mind will trick you and say, no, girl, don't listen to that crazy girl from Colombia. She is crazy, okay? So just keep doing what you're doing. Keep eating the mac and cheese, ice cream. I'll take care of you. Yeah, it may keep you happy for a few minutes, but the problem's still going to be there, okay? Okay, so anxiety, something to keep in perspective. When you have anxiety thoughts, anxious thoughts, always think, because we're time travelers, guys, okay? So hold on, we're time travelers. You can think about the future, we can think about the past, and we can stay in the present. But the mind stays mostly in the future and in the past. Have you guys noticed that? Yes. So when you notice that, say, come back. Come back. Who knows? Why am I stressing if I'm going to win the lottery? How do I know? I'm just going to pray to God here. Ooh, Lord Jesus, please, you know my needs. I need $1 million. God, provide for me. And that's all you do. You send the request, and you let God work it out whichever way he's going to give it to you. But you don't sit there every night, man, I'm not going to hit the lottery. Probably not. I don't know, that bill. Oh, Lord, how am I going to do that? So you're really telling God, I don't trust you. I don't want to do, I know you're not going to provide for me, so I better do it myself. And I'm going to worry myself to death, try and control the future, which I can't. But we keep trying. We keep hitting that door, okay? So every time you feel anxious, it's the future. You're in the future. Come back to the present. And how you come back to the present? Something physical. So do you guys remember what I said? Movement and change of temperature, right? That's the fastest way to come back to the present. Put some cold water on your face. Drink an ice cold glass of water. Right? Do a little run in place, whatever that is physical. Oh, no, I got to get out of that mood. I got to get out, write, dance, sing, do whatever. Call your husband, your wife, and just like, hey, let's go run over there. I'll race you to the kitchen. I want you to be creative, okay? Because we all are full of ideas. So think about what will bring you to the present, but it's something physical and related to movement and temperature change. That's the fastest way to change your state of mind. And so what is depression? What do you think depression is? What are we worrying about? That past. Can you change it? Can you do anything about it? Does it matter if you regret it? You're just carrying your backpack with more weight, more rocks to carry on your present life. There's nothing. It's useless, okay? It's kind of like when you're trying to pick up water with your hands. You can't cry over spilled milk. So leave it there. Write about it and say, God, I let it go. You handle it now. It's out of my hands. Burn it, tear it up, put it in a ball, just throw it, play basketball with it, something. Let it go. You don't need to carry more weight on your current backpack. And come back to the present, okay? No, I'm not saying run from your depression and your anxiety. Just recognize it, process it, help it go through it, because emotions are temporary, right? They don't last forever. But if you hold on to, you're choosing to hold them for longer than they're expected. And that's why you see people grieving for 30, 40 years, or they don't understand where their cancer is coming from because they had chose to drag it. What are you doing? I'm just dragging this little guilt over here, just doesn't want to leave me alone. So put that into perspective. What am I carrying? Okay, next, always stays in the present. Always stay in the present. And perfect. So we have this life pie. I want you to take a picture of it. We're coming to an end, almost to an end of my presentation. So I have a prescription that I have invented based on my own life experiences and through workshops and other people. Those are the areas that we need to feed in our lives, okay? So as a homework, I'm gonna give you guys homework. When you get home, I want you to rate your pie, each slice of your pie, in a scale 0 to 10, where are you? Take a very honest, accountable inventory of your pie, okay? Why? Because when all those areas are full, guess what? You're gonna feel successful, you're making progress, you're satisfied. You're not perfect, because we're not aiming to perfection, but we're aiming to stay fulfilled. Am I doing good? Am I doing the best I can in this life to take care of my body and my mind? Okay? So this is a very powerful exercise that I have done before in other workshops. And guys, it's amazing. It can help you stay focused and grounded, especially in the present. Yes, it's another good exercise so you don't go run to the inside in the future or go run to the depression in the past, okay? Okay, next. I found some scriptures because I love when I'm also stressed out. I just go to God, give me a sign. And you guys believe it? I'll be driving and I see scriptures thrown on my face. I'm like, oh, Lord Jesus. Like that one, Philippians, I can do all things through Christ who strengthened me. I just saw that one because this week I was going through a lot of roller coasters. And that one I was like, okay, God, thanks for the reminder. So ask. If we don't ask, we don't get. So closed mouths don't get fed. That's kind of one of our motto statements at Paul Quinn. So make sure that we ask for help. Cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. Remember the letter I told you, the writing, and then you burn it, throw it in the trash, do basketball hoops with it. That's that one. That's that one. You give it to God. This too shall pass. That is, emotions are temporary. If you're going through hell, keep going, right? If you stay, why? Is it gonna last longer? So get away from it as fast as you can. Just keep on going because you don't wanna stay in the tornado. You wanna move away from the tornado. In the middle of difficulty, there's opportunity. There's opportunity. So always think about that. Okay, what can I learn from this? Why am I going through this? Why am I feeling this? Because that's where your answers are going to be. And the perfect love drives out fear. Okay, so love is the most beautiful, powerful energy we can even imagine and feel, right? So when we do things for love, you see, that's why we do crazy things. That's why when I got married, I did a lot of mistakes when I was young because we said, because I'm in love, but love blinds us, okay? A little bit. So we have to be careful too, but love is really the force that is gonna get us out of all these wars and all these dramas that we live in this current century. Okay, This is another part of the plan, okay? Kind of like the pie. So these are the wellness plan I will recommend for you to follow, and this is what actually I put my clients on this prescription plan. I make them start eating good. Check out your diet. Take out sugars, fried food out of your diet. I'm currently losing weight. I have lost 11 pounds as of yesterday. But since January, guys, I lost another 10. So I'm really, really taking care. See, we're a roller coaster. We're a roller coaster. Sometimes I'm doing good and sometimes not so good. So I'm just like you guys. So vitamins, minerals, clean eating, less chemicals, and use herbs and natural remedies, okay? That's something that I'm preaching, but I also walk with you guys on that. Your mental health, control your stress, get a therapist, do your meditation, prayer daily, learn new things. On YouTube is a huge university, YouTube, social media, journaling, and positive thinking, okay? So those are the lessons that I want you guys to start, your homework. I'm gonna call you guys and say, have you done your homework? Sleep, who loves to sleep here? Oh my gosh, that's my most favorite thing to do. If they take sleep away from me, guys, I become a witch. I honestly become a witch. I don't speak, I bark, and I transform to an animal, honestly. So don't take away my sleep. 8 to 9 hours, your body will tell you, okay? So sleep a little longer. Tell your husband, you can make breakfast today for us. Let me sleep, okay? And if you can't sleep, figure out why you can't sleep. And mostly we'll go back to your nutrition and your supplements, okay? So I'm gonna give you something. That's why it says, cut off blue light, okay? So you can use some glasses that block those blue lights at night, especially. Take magnesium, take GABA. Those are vitamins that are at any store. Take magnesium every night. Sleep with a cooler temperature. Get used to that. When it's dark, it's dark. Don't turn off so many lights, and your room should be pitch black so you can have a wonderful sleep. And if it's not, put one of those ice masks and you will not see anything. I cannot sleep with those things, but some people can. So figure out how to keep your room dark. So this is called sleep hygiene. And if you still cannot sleep, take a warm bath with Epsom salt. That will make you feel like $1,000,000, trust me. Sometimes I just do my feet and I sleep like a queen. Okay, next, and we're on the last slide. Next one is physical exercise and movement, right? We've already been talking about, if you need to gain weight, get on your healthy weight. If you need to lose weight, get on your healthy weight. Whatever you have to do, hire a nutritionist, follow a good diet, not any fake diet, just a real diet. Weightlifting, we need to feed our muscles, so make sure you use some resistance training. You don't have to join a gym, but you can just carry gallons of water around the house, move furniture. Be creative. Be creative. We have a lot of things to do, and if you don't, you can come to my house and do some chores, okay? Because I have a lot of things to clean my garage. Okay, cardio movement every day. All you need is 20 minutes a day, okay? 20, 30 minutes, a nice walk. It will keep you at a very good balance. Use the sauna, okay? Take the rest, the breaks when you need to. Like taking a nap in the middle of the day. Guys, that is so beautiful. I don't know if you guys have ever done that, but I know compared to the Colombian culture to American, in Colombia we take mandatory breaks at noon for lunch and we nap. And if you try to go purchase something out there, it's not there. It's closed, okay? They close the stores. 5 minutes. I like you. You're keeping me on my toes. And grounding, do you guys know what grounding is? So give me a little quick word, what grounding is for you. Perfect. You connect with nature. So once a week, go to a park, touch a tree, water your plants, grow whatever you want to grow at home, but don't grow that one, okay? Don't grow that one. Stay away from. I'm not endorsing anything. But stay in connection with nature, okay? So go to a lake, whatever it is that keeps you outdoors, and put your feet on the ground. It's amazing, guys. It recharges us, and also it balances your stress, your anxiety, and your depression. It really, that our earth is magnetic, and it's gonna pull out any junk that you don't need in your body. Trust it. Do you guys feel that when you guys do that? Like, do you feel, oh my gosh, I feel like I really feel lighter. I feel lighter and I get sleepy. Like I can feel it immediately. Okay, hydration, I don't need to say. 8 glasses of water a day, amazing. Water, you also find water in fruits and vegetables. So this is your encouragement. If you needed a sign to eat more fruits and vegetables, Angela said, I gotta eat fruits and vegetables. So do it. And self-care. Life is not just work and doing all these hard things. You need to take time to travel, find a hobby, read, have fun, laugh, join a club. Life is to enjoy it, guys. So don't forget that, okay? And next slide. So this is my closing statement. Who you want to be, right? And I'm going to read these statements that are word for you. These are called words of affirmations. And you can look at this in YouTube, put affirmations for whatever topic, and boom, listen to it, and you have a power source of energy, positive energy. It will drive away all the negative thoughts. We are in constant change and evolution. That means you should not stay in this spot where I am today tomorrow. Tomorrow I should be better than today. Okay, so think about that, because progress is progress. We are encouraged to adapt and grow. Can we do it? Heck yeah, we can. And we've done it for several years. So look back and say, this is hard, but I've done this before. I can do this. We must be flexible to life's challenges, because guess what? Life is gonna keep lifing. It's not gonna stop for us, not gonna wait. Hurry up, girl, I'm waiting on you, okay, hurry up. No, we gotta be like, oh, okay, different shoes, here I come. And you go and adapt, be flexible. We are resilient, we are resourceful, we are creative, we are limitless. So all of that proves that we can change. And that's really the key to navigating life's challenges, all right? So that's all the messages I have for you today. I hope you enjoy them. Is there any questions that you want me to answer? Yes, ma'am. I think we have like a minute.
We get a minute.
Okay. I went a little bit over my time. And remember, if I don't get to you, you can write them down and I answer.
Great presentation.
Thank you.
When you talked about depression and the self-plan, I'm pretty sure you're familiar with HFD, high functioning depression.
Yes.
What would be a plan of action? Because these people go on with their lives, they're working, but yet they're dealing with depression.
Yes. Well, we didn't touch it today, but there's clinical conditions that we were all doing holistic medicines today. But if there's a chronic situation that needs to be seen by a doctor, a psychiatrist, and the person needs medication for it, that's the correct route. So I encourage that person to find resources so they can, because what I tell my clients that are on prescribed medications, your doctor's always gonna tell you the medicine alone doesn't work. You have to combine it with therapy, because you have to implement like a very nice treatment that suits your life. It's not just one cookie cutter medicine. You understand what I'm saying? Because I deal with people that are chronically depressed and there's an imbalance. But guess what? When they change their diets, they start changing it, because vitamin B complex, D3, and you guys can write it down, and magnesium, those 3 are the key vitamins for mental health, to keep your neurotransmitters running so you don't feel depressed, so you kick in that serotonin, the hormone of happiness. So We can talk more because I know we're running out of time.
Yes.
Does that answer your question? A little bit? We're going to talk. We're going to talk.
And this would need to be the last question.
Yes.
Oh, man. Angela, I just want you to repeat the homework assignment in regards to the pie. You said we're not trying to get filled, we're just trying to be satisfied or something to that effect?
Yes. So, and good, you get extra points for writing down the assignments. So the pie, you're going to take each area of your pie and you're going to analyze it from a scale 0 to 10. 0 being the worst, 10 being the best that you're doing on that, and analyze it, how you're doing in that area of your life. Because the goal is not to be perfect. That's what I say. We're not aiming for perfection, but we're aiming for satisfaction in that area of your life. So if you feel satisfied with an 8, that's amazing. If you want to be in a 10, there's room for growth. If you want to keep going, because none of these pies have a limit. You go as far as you want to go. All right, guys. Well, my time is up, and thank you so much for today. I love your attention, and I hope you guys learned something today from me. Very humble to be here.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Angela. Let's give her another hand clap of affirmation there. Thank you. We do appreciate your energy, your insight, your wisdom. We have been blessed by you today. Thank you again very much.
You're very welcome.
Okay.
I really come from the bottom of my heart. Very humble to be here. Thank you.
And it shows your passion. Thank you. So we want to remind everybody, we have the QR code on the screen. We do not have handout surveys. We want everybody to take a survey. Open your phone up. Put in the QR code, take the survey. This is the first in what is hopefully going to be many more of these type of workshops to come on the anxiety and things of this nature, but we need to know how we're doing. We need to know where we can improve, what we've done good, what we can do better. So please, we ask everybody to take the survey. Also, we're asking that all of the presenters come down front. They want to get a picture of all of you, so we're asking all the presenters to come down front and just come down to the front pew here. I'm sorry. Some of them have already gone? Okay, so some of them have already gone to the room. Maybe they've got us on the video and they'll come back down. But maybe we can get somebody to run them down and bring them down. Paul, I don't know if that's how you want to handle that. But the major thing is that we want everybody to complete the survey, and we're going to try to get the presenters back down for the photo session. They're here? Okay. So the next session will begin at 10:15. We'll have a break. So once you finish your survey, we can go out for the next session, for the break in the next session. But please complete your survey, and we want to encourage you to use the doors to my left, your right, to exit out into the atrium area. I'm one of the shepherds here at the Marcellus Avenue Church of Christ, and it is my distinct pleasure to introduce the presenter for today, Dr. Dr. Jandel Crutchfield. I can say a few things about her that's not on the paper, but I'm going to try to stick to the program so as not to embarrass her, number one. But I'm going to stick to the program, and I'm just going to read what we have here. Dr. Crutchfield is a licensed clinical social worker and associate professor at the School of Social Work, University of Texas at Arlington. Dr. Jandel Crutchfield is an associate professor in the School of Social Work at the University of Texas at Arlington. Prior to her academic career, Dr. Crutchfield worked as a licensed clinical social worker in schools. In addition, she has served as a counselor in community mental health, in-home counseling, and residential treatment settings. Dr. Crutchfield earned her BA in psychology from Washington University in St. Louis. She earned her Master of Social Work from the Florida State University College of Social Work. Dr. Crutchfield earned her PhD in social work from the Louisiana State University. Her research examines racial justice in various sectors of society, particularly educational settings. So without further ado, I give you Dr. Jandel Crutchfield.
All right. All right, great. So I figured out how to work the clicker, I think. Good morning. It's great to see you all. So I am particularly excited because so many of you all are my church members, and I don't know if I've ever been before you in my professional capacity. So I'm pleased to be here today. And so welcome to this session, Families Forward, How New Traditions Can Heal Generational Trauma. So we have a lot of topics that we're trying to squeeze into this hour and 15 minutes. It's interactive, so I really am believing in the work part of the workshop, so that's why you guys have some scratch paper. You'll be talking to each other and to me, so let's get that in our heads. I want to set some expectations for the workshop, though. Because this concept can be taught in multiple workshop sessions over multiple months and years, this is really an overview of generational trauma. And so you're looking for understanding of what it is, exploring how it shows up through race, immigration, financial stress, learning some tools for being resilient, and then brainstorming for yourselves potential new traditions. So the word solved is not up there, right? And so I think it's important to set that expectation, because when we come to these types of sessions, we open up some things within ourselves. And so you may have today some of those aha, like this is what I think happened to me and my family, right? Or I experienced that. And so those things sometimes need additional follow-up. So we'll talk about some ways to be resilient, but a lot more can be said. So I wanted to start off by saying that. So the first question, it would be, what is trauma? And I'm gonna ask Brother Bradford to, I'm just joking. I had to mess with Brother Bradford being in my session. Okay, so raise your hand if you know what trauma is. Okay, all right. And so for those of you guys who have raised your hand again if you could explain to somebody else what trauma is. Right? So that's why this slide is here, right? Because that's just the nature of things. When we're talking about stuff like psychological concepts, we're like, I think I know what I'm talking about, but then I have to explain it to somebody, I really don't know what I'm talking about. So we want to make sure we're all on the same page when we talk about trauma. So trauma is something that is deeply distressing or disturbing. So if I stub my toe up here and I say, ow, I'm really not deeply disturbed or distressed by that, right? If I get into a major car accident, some of us have been in car accidents, that's something that's deeply distressing or disturbing. So there's a difference. I'm going to use my family as a reference. I have my mom here and my husband, so y'all just have to grin and bear it. But the first example is my kids, right? So some of them think that lots of things are deeply distressing and disturbing, but they're really not, right? But the thing about trauma is sometimes we experience things that overwhelm our ability to cope.
And particularly if you are a Christian here that has been a Christian for a while, a lot of times you have faith enough that allows you to cope with a lot of things. The trauma means that overwhelms all of the abilities, the things you've studied, the things you've read, the scriptures that you memorize. All of those experiences are overwhelmed and you cannot cope. So that's what trauma is. It usually leaves some types of lasting negative effects. So you can see it, right? It's not, again, I stubbed my toe, I had a bruise for a little while, don't ever think about it again. Trauma is very different. You're usually going to see it show up somewhere in your life for years to come. And then it can be a single thing that happens to you or repeated. And so a lot of times we think that, okay, it happened one time, we should be over it. It's been 20 years. It can be a single thing that happens that causes you to experience trauma. And then lastly, trauma can be emotional or physical. So our bodies can experience trauma. We talked about in accidents, right? Sometimes you don't recover from an injury, but a lot of what we're talking about today is emotional trauma. And so again, it's important to set this standard because sometimes it seems like pie in the sky, and so I'm gonna do my best to give us concrete examples when we're talking about this. So if we got trauma down, we're moving into generational trauma. So something that's deeply distressing, disturbing, leaves lasting effects, you're overwhelmed, all the things we just said in the last slide, now make that happen across generations of people. Generational trauma. So the same deeply distressing stuff that happened with great-grandparents passed on to grandparents, to your parents, to you, and then you to your children and to their children. So across generations of people, these types of situations happening. So we're not going to, I'm not preaching to y'all today. We'll talk a little bit about faith and how that can be used as some resilience. But a challenge, and because I am a member of the church and I'm a Christian, a challenge for Christians is that sometimes we leave it at faith's door, right? We leave it at the door of prayer and we skip all the rest of the slides. So I'll have a couple of slides about faith and resilience, but that's not all of them. And so that's where I'm grounded today, is in the professional piece and the practices that we can use in our lives to help us along. All right, so trauma is passed down through family lines via behaviors, beliefs, and systems. All right, so how we act, how our great uncles acted, what they said, how our families work can send through generations those traumatic experiences. And so it's often unspoken, but you feel it. And so sometimes you're growing up in a family or you're in a household or you're in a situation and you can't put your finger on it, but you feel it. So sometimes that, because it's been going on so long across generations, sometimes it's not really spoken, but everybody is aware of it. That type of feeling. So it can influence our parenting, our emotions, our relationships, and how we feel about ourselves. So let's tackle this some more. So a biblical perspective on generational pain. So the Bible is full of stories about generational trauma. Did y'all know that? Maybe. Think about Abraham and all the conflict and deception and all the things that happened through his family and eventually leading to healing. So Exodus 25, I'm gonna read, if I can pull this up. That's just a piece of it. So this is from the Ten Commandments. It says, "You shall not bow down to them or worship them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, punishing the children for the sin of the parents to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me." So what your parents did goes on for generations, right? So that's an idea, a concept of how trauma can be passed down. But then you have in Joel 2:25, "I will restore the years the locusts have eaten." So I'll read that one. It says, "And I will restore to you the years that the locust hath eaten, the cankerworm, the caterpillar, the palmer worm, my great army which I sent to you." And so this talks about God's people not being faithful. It talks about destruction and hardship. That's what locusts represent a lot of times in the Bible, is that destruction and hardship. but God being able to be a healer. So there's definitely a presence of generational trauma in Scripture, and so we know that God offers that restoration, healing, and hope. So it should be familiar, and so we want to bring it to our own lives. So the first thing we're talking about is race and trauma. So trauma that has been passed down from generations and generations of people whose ancestors have experienced slavery. And so again, the conversations about this today are, hey, that happened so long ago. That's something we need to move on from. We don't really need to talk about it, forget it. Well, a lot of the trauma experience, whether it's physical trauma from the passage on ships to how you were treated during that time, is still visited upon us. And so some of that historical trauma we can still feel today. Segregation, some of us have lived through that. In this very room. And so you guys had multiple repeated issues, right? Multiple repeated disturbing experiences during those years that you still can see lasting effects on how you behave, how you talk to your kids about certain things that have happened in your life. And then the current practice of things that we experience that are from systemic racism, right? And so those things, particularly in the US context, so in this country, are things that can give us the experience of historical trauma. So today, so that's historic, today, things that happen to us that might, again, because it can be one time or it can be repeated, microaggressions. And so those are the small slights that you kind of are scratching your head. That's the best way to describe a microaggression. You're scratching your head and you're like, did somebody say something that offended me? I can't really put my finger on it. It's not an open racial slur, right? Or it's not something that people would identify necessarily as something that's racist, but it is still impacting your self-worth. Go back to that first slide, your own self-worth in that. Racial profiling, so that still happens, and other inequalities. And so when you think about with children, how they experience race and trauma, sometimes they feel stress even when it's not named. And so I've heard it referred to before as a tax. If you're a racial minority in this country and not being able to grow up without certain cares and experiences, it's a racial tax that our children can feel, can't often name when they're in situations and environments where they are the racial minority. All right, so additionally, we think about immigration and political anxiety. And so before you get nervous, we're not talking about politics. We're talking about political anxiety, all right? And so the best way to describe this is whether or not you agree with policies, there's a fact that people experience trauma based on some of these things, right? So wherever you fall on the political spectrum, if you think that people should be sent back to their original countries, et cetera, when those things happen, those people experience trauma. And so that's what we're talking about here. So if you're not in danger of experiencing these things, these are things that are still being experienced by others. So family separation, and particularly in the work that I do in schools and have done in schools, this type of trauma and incident, right, shows up often for children that are facing separation of families, losing your language if you're coming over. If you're being sent to a certain place where you don't speak the language. And then cultural identity stress, right? Who am I? It's hard enough to grow up in society as a kid, as a teenager. That's why we have our teens over here in these sessions to talk about identity and anxiety. If we add the cultural component of the stress, that's even more. So fear of deportation, deeply disturbing, distressing, overwhelming you, your ability to cope. Think back to that very first slide. All of these things could cause you to experience trauma. And so children, again, carry those silent burdens of fear and confusion. And so, again, this is going across those generations of people. All right, and so here's a big one. I know I'm not going to pick on Brother Bradford again. Brother Bradford is extremely wealthy. He's extremely wealthy, so he doesn't experience financial stress, right? But there are generations, right? If you think back to generations before you, that are shaped by lack in terms of money, right? Money is how you get the things that you need in this society. So we have generations that are shaped by poverty, that are shaped by practices like redlining, where you really, based on your race, your racial background, you're not given access to not just places to live, but services that you need, basic services like healthcare, right, or education. And then wage gaps, so gaps in funding. So living below the poverty line or with scarcity, sometimes you develop over time through generations this fear of spending too much because we don't have enough, or I have to keep everything that I have. I have to hoard it, right? So you think of hoarding behavior. So some of this stuff you see in people, and you have to start thinking, right? Where were these practices and behaviors originated from? It might be your own behavior, but where do they come from? And then financial avoidance. I got this credit card, but I'm not keeping up with it because I'm not thinking about it at all. I'm just going to spend. I'm not going to think about a budget. I'm not going to think about whether I have enough or not. I'm going to completely avoid thinking about finances because of the generations of trauma and experiencing lack from there. So some of what you might hear, say, or have heard or said are things like, well, there's never really enough, so you got to make sure that you don't spend, things like that. Or because of our experiences and historical trauma, we can't really trust banks, but banks are a lot of times how we get access to things, right? And so this is this idea of a scarcity mindset. We don't have enough, and so we can't spend, we can't enjoy these different things. All right, so here are the signs. We talked about quite a few things, talked about potentially if you are a racial minority, those different types of potential traumas in your citizenship status, if you're facing deportation, if you're having financial stress or issues over generations, some things that might show up in your families. So this repeated patterns of dysfunction, families that just can't necessarily get it right. So there's always someone that's addicted to something. And so when we think about addiction, a lot of times we think about illegal substances, right? Somebody's addicted to something. You can be addicted to your screens. How many of these kids these days, right, seem like they're addicted to screens? You can be addicted to relationships, right? Like, I've always got to be with somebody. I've always got to be in a relationship, to food, to work. Right? So you're overcompensating for something because you haven't necessarily dealt with trauma that has been passed down in your family. So obviously abuse is a pattern of dysfunction. And so when we have historically experienced abuse in our families, we are more likely to abuse others in our families, and not necessarily in the way that we were abused. So just because someone was physically abused, they may emotionally abuse someone else. And so you're looking at abuse as a broader category than just physical abuse. So when we see some of the issues that come about in abuse, you usually can trace a line back throughout the family history. And then sometimes there's just silence. And again, I talked briefly about the fact that sometimes there's something that we know is happening, but we can't talk about it. And so sometimes how we cope as families with trauma is by, hey, we don't discuss that. So anxiety and hypervigilance in children is one of the ways that generational trauma shows up when there's no clear reason. So if a kid is anxious about something that's coming up in the family, anxious about someone being ill, right? That's a reasonable, kind of rational time to be anxious. But when there's no clear reason, they're just always nervous about something. They're kind of, oh, what's that? What's happening? That can be a sign that you, someone else in your family have passed on some type of trauma to kids, and so they're experiencing that without a clear reason. Another sign of trauma in your family, and so again, you may be the one that does this practice, or you saw a parent or a relative do this practice, emotional numbing. I'm good because I actually don't want to experience any emotions. I'm good. And so there's a lot of confusing information out there, right? We just heard a great presentation where we talk about affirmations, right? And positive feelings and self-talk, and we build ourselves up and all of this stuff. But that's not in opposition to acknowledging the feelings we have. And I think sometimes that's what we try to replace it with, right? So we can only say good things, don't ever acknowledge the bad, just numb the feeling and the emotion as it happens. So we may be the people doing that or teaching our kids that or relatives. And so the opposite of that, though, is explosive anger. So anger that gets completely out of control. And so you may have witnessed that in a family member. You may have heard about it in a family member. And so those are two very big extremes that you might see with unresolved trauma. And then just difficulty trusting others or institutions. So it's important that we use intuition to talk about trust, like who can I trust? But when there's never anybody you trust, there may be some history of disturbing experiences in your family that have overwhelmed the family in their ability to cope, or institutions. All right. Okay, so let's keep talking about those signs and how they show up. So again, thinking about yourselves, thinking about your family, thinking about your kids, relatives, early adult roles. So we probably all know someone, or we may have been those people that were little adults early, like really early. And so it's one thing to teach your kids to do things so they can be responsible adults, right? Malaika was babysitting her little cousin yesterday, right? So, hey, learn how to change a diaper, right? It's another thing when you lose a parent, and so you're having to step into the role of a parent. Or even if you have a parent present, but they're not assuming parental responsibilities, and so then you're stepping into the role of a parent or an adult. And so these are, again, some of the impacts of those traumatic things passed on. If your grandparent didn't know how to parent, you're a parent, maybe your parent never learned, and so you're having to assume those early adult roles. Perfectionism, this one is interesting, and I wanted to mention it because a lot of people do very well, they're very successful in life, very accomplished, but it is actually a response to trauma, because when I'm not perfect, right, I've had some type of very shocking, disturbing experience, and so I need to be perfect. And so you see health issues, issues with stress, and so you'll see those children that feel like they can never rest, family members that are like, no, everything has to be perfect, or they kind of shut down. And that's what the next piece is, emotional shutdown. So you're not available to anybody. I'm just done. You're through, right? And so nobody can really get to you. So the anxiety shows up, guilt, low self-esteem, and then this is what people do. You just mimic the behaviors of the people that are taking care of you. That's a lot of times what children are doing. And so we've done that for good or for bad. Right now we happen to be talking about trauma, but we often mimic the behavior of the caregivers in our lives, and a lot of times they're unhealed, right? All right, so now's your first opportunity to turn and talk, or to journal. And so that's why I gave you guys some scratch paper, because you may still kind of be thinking about it, so you may want to write. Or if you feel comfortable, you can share. So there are about 3 questions here. And so thinking about all of the overview we had, whether that's political stress, anxiety, financial stress, racial stress, or trauma, what unspoken lessons about fear, survival, or money did your family pass down? So we're going to take one question at a time. All right, so you guys can write or you can turn and talk to those around you, and I'll share some of mine. So we're going to take about 5 minutes to do that. The first question only: what unspoken lessons about fear, survival, or money did your family pass down? So you can choose one of those things or all of them. Y'all start. Think and chat. Turn to chat. Oh, you got family members on the same row, so that's going to be interesting. I give you permission to talk to your parents openly and honestly if they're in here with you. All right? You say you have a question? Okay. Mm-hmm. I think you need to get a partner, Brother Bradford. Brother Bradford needs a partner because he has some good discussion here going on. You write yours down? Okay. You can use your phones too. I see some people put notes in their phones if you're not chatting. Putting it down. I know all of y'all. You writing or you talking? Okay, all three of them? Okay, good. I'm just listening. Y'all good? Mm-hmm. Other people doing. Yeah. Yeah. That's right. All right, about two more minutes on this first question, and then we'll have some people share if they're comfortable. 2 more minutes. What unspoken lessons about fear, survival, or money did your family pass down to you? Yeah. We're wrapping up now. you have something good you need to share? Well, you need to at least share with your group. 1 minute to wrap up. I'm hearing some good conversation. All right, start thinking if you would like to share with the broader group. I have a few people I have asked to share, but if you want to share, you can. So let's bring it back to the middle so we'll have enough time. Let me check the time. I'm supposed to be done in 30 minutes. I think that's good. Okay, so there, again, I give you permission if you're in here with a sibling or a child or a parent or a relative to be honest about your family trauma. Okay, so it's fine. Just putting that out there. But I heard some really good conversations and examples. So I wanted to give a few people a chance to share, and then anybody else that I didn't already talk to. So I'm gonna bring it here.
So we were talking about the family trauma, and I was telling Sister Jones here, Jasmine, that I found that trauma with my grandmother. So she would stockpile everything, and so this is them coming out of depression. So you got to think about the era in which they grew up in. She had canned goods galore. She had washing powder galore. She had soap. We could go there and grocery shop. She had so much stuff. And I find that going down to I stockpile toilet paper and paper towels, and I think just because of that. So seeing that generational piece, I say I do it because I don't want to have to go to the store so often, but I think it is. And we're talking about living through COVID. Each generation has had its thing, and you would go to the grocery store and there's nothing there. That's the same type of traumatic experience of, I don't have enough to take care of my family because it's all gone. Everybody else has stockpiled it. So yeah, that was one of our examples.
And then Sister Jones.
One thing that it was like an unspoken lesson was we would keep money under the bed, under the mattress, because it was just like a safe, it just made us feel better you can't trust the banks, like you don't know what can happen. We always need to have like something on the side for whatever emergency reasons. So I would just always remember seeing my parents get money under the mattress. So that's something that stuck with me. I don't do that anymore, but it was something I had to unlearn, as well as just like working twice as hard, wherever you're at, wherever job you're in. We have to work twice as hard to get into certain positions and stuff like that. So.
Raise your hand if you've heard that. I gotta work twice as hard. Yeah, I've heard that, right? And so those are some great examples of things that actually might work. They actually might work, right? It's not a bad thing to save money and to put it under a mattress, but the trauma behind it, right, is that fear of lack, right? And so I don't know what's going to happen, whatever, I got to have this. And so you're thinking about that, even though you're going to have some money, it's fine. Some of the practices, and I think that's where people struggle in identifying things as trauma, because some of the practices are beneficial. It's helpful to save money, but not from, right? But not from a place of fear. Okay, I have two more people that want to share. Then we got to jump to the next question. Right here. She had her hand up too. You want to share? Did you have your hand up? No? Okay, all right.
Back to what Sister Bedford was talking about, the way we grew up and saw my mother struggle, and money was always an issue. We didn't have it. We didn't have lunch money. So when I had my daughter, I spent so much time giving her what I didn't have and sacrificing until we were grown, my twin sister and I, before we even feel that we deserved to have anything. We would donate and give to causes before we'll take money and spend it on ourselves. And we're gradually getting out of that. And the funny thing about it, I was telling the ladies, my daughter made that observation. She said, Mama, you'll spend money on everybody else but yourself. And it feels like you don't think that you're worthy of it. I said, no, I just want everybody to be happy. She said, well, you deserve to be happy too. So now I have a little fund I call my mad money. I got it from her. That's my Timu money. So.
Right. But the underlying issue with that is the historical trauma, the family trauma of being in lack has taught her something about her self-worth. I don't deserve to have money spent. I don't deserve that purse, that dress, that whatever, because of the experiences I have. And so it shows up in a lot of ways. And so you have to do, that's why I said this is an overview. You have to do a lot of digging to sometimes find the origins of what we're believing. I'm going to take just two more.
I've just got a question. Have we as black folks use tradition for what we've done, and it's been trauma all our lives?
Okay, we can leave now. That's the point, and we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that, right? And building new traditions. That's exactly right. Mm-hmm.
Maybe mine is related to his comment, but I was thinking more of along the line of what I dealt with more than generational trauma was cultural trauma, because my parent was the generation where they were oppressed and had to do a lot of things. So we were instructed how we ought to act. You know, when police pull you over, you keep your hands up. Let them see it. Don't sass anybody and things like that. So that was the kind of trauma that I dealt with. I don't know that it could be family, but I think it's more of a cultural trauma.
Yeah, so I'm gonna stay here for a minute. So, you know, if you guys are those people who are like slides and presentations and all of that, we may not get through all of them, but I think it's important to talk about a couple of the things because, again, it's another example of that's safe. It's safe to make sure that you get home if you get pulled over. And so I really want us to think about the fact that even things that are safe are based on fear. We went through all kinds of stuff, and so I want to make sure that you are in the best position to be able to come back alive, but you probably also passed some of that on, right? One of the things that you said, don't sass anybody. And so I want you to think about, as a person, as a black person, so I'm just speaking as myself, right? As a racial minority, maybe y'all don't experience this, but sometimes the reason we look at kids who are what we think misbehaving, and we have that knee-jerk reaction and we're like, oh, they need to get that kid under control, is based on what Brother Moore, is saying, a safety issue. Because we have in our DNA historical trauma that says if you get out of line, what happens to you, right? And so to your point, what we have done then to many of our black children is you can't be free. You can't be a kid. You can't run through, even in here, you can't run through the church building because it brings up that historical trauma piece. So we're not living in it every day, but we each have sometimes that knee-jerk reaction of, I wish they would sit down, or I wish they would mind, right? So the language has changed over the years, don't sass, don't mind, but there's sometimes something that happens when we see those kids, adults, teens that are speaking up because we have the generational trauma of knowing what that can lead to. It can lead to death. It can lead to being jailed. And unfortunately, in our country, we still see some of those instances, right, of that ending that way. So I wanted to just stay there for a bit. 10:54. Okay. Let's do these three, and I can skip through the rest now. Okay, so we're going to do another 5-minute. And this time, just do a journal. So write it down for yourself or note it in your head. How have they shaped your parenting and relationships? And so we had some examples, right? Brother Moore, you said maybe you didn't really pass that on, but think about some of the experiences that we've had. So Sister Jones, you said you've unlearned that, so that's not something you will pass on. But I think Sister Bedford, you probably have had a conversation about safety, or like how many of us have had those conversations. And again, we're having them because, you need to get home safely. But it still has to be an acknowledgement of because we have been traumatized by police brutality, right? By any type of violence against us as minority people in this country. So those things sometimes shape the way you parent or the way you have relationships with people. So 2 minutes to think about that. I want you to just write that one down, and then we'll talk about the last one. So think about how historical trauma, generational trauma passed down, those unspoken lessons have shaped how you parent. If money was an issue generationally for you and your family, how did you parent? How are your relationships built? How do they center around some of these lessons? Brother Bradford, don't forget, I need to talk about what you said at the very end. Yeah, at the very end. So just 2 minutes there. This is a self-reflection. So you can type it in your phone, scratch paper. And so you can see why this can be multiple workshops, because just identifying the lessons could be hours long, right? Just identifying these lessons. But how they shape what we do is a whole nother, but we want to think about it briefly this morning. Sister Brooks shared with us an example of that. 1 minute for that question. All right, so we're going to go on to the third question. So this is a turn and talk or share. What's one belief or behavior you want to change for the next generation? So some of you guys have already done that. And so that's fine if you want to keep that up. But if you, for example, and so I'm going to use Sister Jones's example, were taught, we really can't trust banks. We got to keep this money here. We got to be ready. And you're unlearning that. That might be your belief or your idea that you want to change for the next generation. And so it could be what I talked about, right? Letting kids be free to be kids. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So this is a turn and talk. So think about something you want to change. So this is future focus. And so hopefully we brought you through identifying something that needs to be changed so you can share that. You said you got that already? Dun, dun. The social worker. Okay. Okay, we'll take another minute because we are getting close to time. 1 more minute. One belief or behavior you want to change for the next generation. I already have Brother Bradford that's going to share for us. Dun, 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 dun. We have lots of conversations. 1 more minute. Okay, let's bring it back to the center. I'm going to have Brother Bradford share. Anybody else that wants to share, they can. Let's bring it back to the center, everyone. I'm glad y'all are having some good discussions. All right. Okay, so this is a good example of generationally some beliefs and behaviors that's passed on that are not helpful and how that can be different going forward. Oh, you have it? Okay, go ahead.
All right, so this last question, and I'm not going to go too far. I don't have a PhD, but I would study this to say I grew up in a generation as a minority that says we were always taught, wait to be told to do something. My parents would say, oh, go do this, go do this. Have you done this? Have you done this? They would always condition you that you didn't really do anything until you were told to do it. But then in corporate America, where I spent all of my time over 35 years, my counterparts were not raised that way. So they don't go to work to wait to be told to do something. They just go do it. They have this freedom to do it. So when they have that freedom, right, wrong, or indifferent, they get some of their promotions from that. But when we go to work, we're kind of sitting waiting for our manager to say, what's next? What is the next step? What do you want me to do next? What do you want me to do next? And I think that's a disadvantage that we have to our children, where we're giving them too many instructions as they grow up instead of just letting them be children, letting them learn, letting them be free, letting them be curious, because that's the first thing they tell you in corporate America. We want you to be curious. And so now we take those restraints off of them. Now, in my own head, I say, now they'll go out and run somebody's company because no one's holding them back. And I think that is one of the biggest behaviors. And I had this before I even knew I was going to be a grandfather. But I knew this a couple of years ago, that we should be working on letting our kids be free, make decisions, have thoughts, because now they're not pigeonholed to wait for somebody to tell them what to do.
Absolutely. So think about that. So what he's saying is, this is one example. So I said sometimes it's beneficial, like when it causes you to save money. But this is a complete disadvantage for a lot of racial minorities whose history is about trauma and being free to speak up. Complete disadvantage in corporate America. Because we're telling you, no, sit, you weren't told, you weren't told, you weren't told. But we're looking for people that have initiative. So our kids literally cannot do what we haven't trained them to do. We're training them to do the opposite based on some trauma we've experienced as Black people. So that's a good example. Did you? Right here. And then I'm going to come to you, Shantae.
I wanted to speak to what Byron was just saying, because I've been in corporate America for 30 years myself. And one of the things my counterparts taught me is it is better to ask for forgiveness than permission.
And we are not taught that most of the time.
No, we're not.
Right?
And I tell you, it works.
Okay. See, exactly, right? So a lot of times so think about the history of generational trauma in us as racial minorities, right? A lot of times there's never going to be forgiveness. So you're spending time in prison if you make a mistake or you do something wrong or you're murdered. If you're spending time, if you're doing something wrong. So that whole mindset, you have to shift. So that's a great example. Okay, one more.
I shared that the behavior I'm changing is we're teaching our children to vacation now, enjoy life now. Don't wait until you retire. God didn't promise you tomorrow, or who's to say you'll be in the best health to enjoy living, to enjoy your vacation when you're in your 60s or 70s. So we take them, every opportunity we have, we take them. So that's why you see our trips to Aruba and Hawaii and in Spain and things like that. We just take them as much as possible, because I can tell you as a child, I never went to Disney World. I didn't experience any of that stuff as a kid, because we were always saving, because we had to save for rainy days, I'm like, well, it's raining now. Anyway, I digress. So I didn't do anything as a child, but as an adult, you know better, you do better, so you expose your children to better.
And again, that very first slide and talking about what trauma does is it impacts our self-worth. So a lot of saving is great, right? We needed to save for rainy days because we need to be able to have money, but sometimes that translated into, and we don't deserve to go to Disney World, right? And so we don't deserve all of these things that cost us money. I'm gonna try to get over here to Sister Clark.
Yeah, I'm just, I was listening to what Brother Bradford said and what Brother Moore said, and it's like the trauma of not wanting to push your children to do things, and then the impact of what we recognize when we do allow children to do things is the thread is what we're trying to, I guess, get over. The trauma that's, well, if I let you go out and do what you're gonna do, then this is what's gonna happen. So we're kind of like stuck between a rock and a hard place, so to speak, but we've got to get beyond that. So.
But some of that is not our fault because we're not enslaved people anymore, but there is still real danger sometimes for people that are speaking up or are not going with the grain. Okay, last one.
I think mine kind of relates to what everybody's already said. It's about not allowing your child to live their life. God gave them that life. And I was reading something online today about Michelle Obama when her mother passed away. She said 3 words her mother said, "This went fast," talking about her life. And Michelle said, "I'm gonna stop trying to do what everybody wants me to do. Write this book, write that book, speak here, speak there. I'm gonna live my life."
And that's great. And again, it is not, so we're not judging our parents because when we talk about trauma, it actually means we have compassion for our parents and grandparents because it's not out of them just being dysfunctional people. It's out of, no, you living your own life can get you killed. And that being passed down as a safety thing, as a safety thing, as a safety thing. And it's not really it's even for me who has young children, there's still a safety concern because we live in the bodies that we live in the country that we live in, with the issues that we have. And so we have to acknowledge all of this and figure out where it comes from and have that balance. I want to congratulate the Brooks sisters, your example of I can't spend anything on myself and learning that from history. Y'all just got back from a cruise, your first cruise. Congratulations. That's changing, right? That's building those traditions. You guys deserve to be able to do that and have fun. Sister Clark, you had something else?
We push out, when we do motivate our children to do things, we do push them to go to a different environment, to a different place, to try to make it there because we're so afraid of what we've already experienced here in our own environment. And I remember coming up that we had lots of uncles and first cousins and aunties that had moved to different places, different states, had made it because they were fleeing the South. I grew up in Mississippi, and so I think that's part of our generational trauma.
It is.
It's embedded, but at the same time, again, when we push our children, hey, go to school at different university or HBCU or try to make it somewhere in a corporation or somewhere other than where we were, that's part of our process in pushing our kids to achieve beyond what we were able to do.
Yeah, and so I want you guys to see more and more. Just be gentle with yourselves because a lot of this is wrapped up in things that we as Black people have created as traditions and as things that are great. My baby is going off to school. That is directly tied to the fact that I don't want you to be here as a 14-year-old boy that's going to whistle at a white woman and get killed. That's directly tied to that. And it's great, again, to go to Columbia, but it can be directly tied to get out of the South because we know what could potentially happen here. And so there's a lot wrapped up into it. And so you guys have actually said a lot of this. So family stories, traditions, so you know about Uncle so-and-so or what happened to cousin so-and-so. And sometimes just hearing the story of it works. How much time do I have? Is it time to? Oh, it says 11:30 or 11, yeah? Okay, all right, great. All right, the absence of traditions, that is also something that we pass down potentially. Stuff has been so overwhelming, I can't cope, so we're just not gonna do anything about it. Modeled behaviors, emotional suppression, control, distrust. Man, there's nobody that's gonna keep us in line than a kid that sees us being hypocritical, right? And so what we model, y'all have all given examples of what your grandparents did, what your parents did. If you are modeling a lot of this that's built on trauma for you, that's going to continue to be passed down. So don't get overexcited, right? And so, I don't know, my elders are back there. So y'all, just be like, because I don't want to get into doctrinal issues, right? But remember, in my professional background, even our posture in some of our worship services, suppress those emotions for safety, right? You can't be overly loud, overly expressive, all of these things. It draws attention to you. You're less safe. That generational trauma, right? And so think about our posture sometimes in worship and what we now have said, this is potentially closer to godliness. All of that is mixed up all together. And so again, what I wanted this presentation to be is just some of those aha, or like, maybe, or I haven't ever thought of it that way, because it is so much. But that emotional suppression piece, right? If I'm controlled, what in the world is an angry black woman trope? That's based on emotional suppression, because we had to survive, not by jumping up and down and being loud. Anybody that was loud typically got chased down, assassinated, those types of things, right? Control, distrust. There is a whole, and I think, in the opening session, she talked a lot about those kind of holistic things and your health. Well, we know generational trauma shows up in health issues that disproportionately affect minority populations. So remember the tax I was talking about. There's a literal tax on our health because of the generational trauma we've experienced as a people, as a group of people. So yes, there can be better health practices, obviously. I'm not gonna say don't walk, eat whatever you want, all of this stuff. But the numbers still don't add up. There's a disproportionate amount of minority people that experience diabetes, hypertension, and so that trauma, that stress, can literally change how our bodies adapt to society. So think about sickle cell anemia as a disease that disproportionately, again, impacts African Americans who have a unique history of trauma, right? And that disproportionality. And then, of course, societal structures that continue to reinforce oppression. Lots of progress over time, but sometimes oppression just shows up in a different way. We have lots and lots of freedoms, but it still can show up differently even in 2025. So faith as a source of resilience. We're moving into, all right, we're here. We've survived a lot of things, even if we're dealing with trauma now. So in the Bible, there are examples of people who express faith, and they were able to break the cycle of trauma. We all have our own spiritual practices, prayer, fasting, serving others, and so those can help to regulate our nervous system. Our church community can be an emotional safety net, accountability, and so this is a way, I think, to use faith, because again, I think, so as a professional, I think faith is misused a lot of times to stay stuck and to say, well, this is tradition. This is what we're supposed to do as Black people, as Hispanic people, as minority people. But we can state whatever it is, whatever piece of the family history that was passed on to us, that maybe we have passed on to our kids and we want to change. I am not what happened to me or to my family. I am who God says I am. And so that's where your faith comes in. We are who God says. And I think Brother Moore you said it very succinctly. You said, God created our kids to be whoever. And so not just kids, but all of you. God has created you to do something. And so that's beyond your trauma. All right, so here's some practical things. This is something, again, that historically, a lot of times, especially in minority communities, we haven't talked openly with kids. Sister Marshawn said we don't talk to them, right, about hard topics in age-appropriate ways. And so if you think back to the generational trauma of whether it's dealing with issues of deportation, citizenship, enslavement, segregation, violence, right, it goes back to Brother Bradford's point. Just do what I tell you. Just do what I say. because I am aware of the safety concerns, the money concerns, all of these things. Do what I say. And so we have, based on our trauma, not necessarily always had the space to talk to kids about hard topics. Just do it. I need you to live. I need you to be okay. Just do it. And so it's okay to do that in age-appropriate ways. New traditions that foster emotional connections. There's an Etsy or a Pinterest something for everything that you want to do. So creating something completely new even if it's for a holiday. And I think connection has to be the piece, because we are dealing with things that have been over generations, and the only way you're going to be able to deal with that is by connecting with folks, not barking and yelling at folks, right? So having that connection. And then in modeling emotional regulation and self-care. And again, the Brooks and probably many of us have said, that's not what we have modeled. I'm gonna work myself to the bone. And so I'm so guilty. We were at the table at lunch one day, and we were going around talking about our hobbies in the family. So, Dad, what does Daddy like to do? We asked the kids. He likes to fish, and JC likes sports. Malika likes art. What does Mommy like to do? Spend time for the family, right? So that piece so my kids are not seeing me, even in 2025, with all the resources that I have, necessarily take time for myself. But it's a challenge. Emotional regulation means that we have to be aware of any of the issues, the traumas that we have, and so that's a challenge sometimes. So therapy, pastoral counseling, we have a great life management center here. That is where you say, yeah, I have experienced a trauma that's been passed down, and I need more help to deal with it, right? Or I'm experiencing it now, or it comes up sometimes, and there's just not enough within me to be able to figure it out. And so I always recommend that. As a licensed clinical social worker, I did counsel and work in organizations that counsel, and so that's a whole profession, right? And so it's okay to go and see counselors for things. All right, so naming trauma, this is some of the stuff that we've practiced today. So this is something for you to be able to continue to do yourselves as you think about just different things over your life. If you ever say, why am I doing something? Why am I telling my kids something? Why am I interacting with other family members this way? Sometimes you have to name whatever it is and acknowledge, this didn't start with me. Our hypervigilance sometimes as minority people in terms of safety and making sure we're walking this line didn't start with us. And it can end with me. So that's the power, that's the empowerment piece, but it can end here. We can allow ourselves to be free, our kids to be free, our communities to be free. It can end with us. And then I'm talking about how you as a family try to heal through prayer, worship, community. And then there are some techniques that you can learn more about in therapy, but setting boundaries. Sometimes everybody in a family, right? So we're gonna do something at the end here where we try to set a family statement, what we wanna do. Not everybody in the family is gonna agree. So again, if we're all in a boat and we're telling everybody to row one way and you have somebody rowing the opposite way, you can't move forward. So it's okay to set those boundaries with family, whoever it might be, at work, in the community. And so again, obviously therapy and breathing. So pausing to do some of the things that we did. You guys can do this alone. You can do this in smaller groups. You can do it with a child that you're out of relationship with, a parent, a cousin, all of those different things, to be able to say, hey, what is it? That would be a very interesting exercise. I don't have it here, but a very interesting exercise for those of us who have teens and above. What are some things that mommy or daddy has taught you that impact you negatively now that you're out in the world, right? Well, you taught me always to Brother Bradford's point, to kind of listen and be quiet and speak. That's not what they're doing in my engineering class, right? Those types of things. That might be a good exercise if you can handle it. So traditions, interviewing elders, honoring their traditions, but breaking the silence. And so for us, right, keep everything in the household, don't speak unless spoken to, all of that stuff. We've got to break the silence. So, and it's interesting. My mom did this last night, and she had no idea like really what I was going to be talking about, but this is a fantastic example of that elder work. So we got home, Jonathan and I, and so my little cousins are in town, so there's, with Malik and JC and their 2 cousins, there's 4 kids in the house, and they're all sitting in her house, and she's going through these conversation cards with them. And you know, you can order all this stuff online, right? But so let's just talk about these things. And so she found out lots of interesting information about the kids. And you can also talk back to them. So like literally sitting and spending time interviewing elders. So you see, hey, how have we thought about things? How can we change things? And then what silences do we need to break? So that intergenerational dialogue is what I'm talking about. Sharing wisdom, sharing traditions between youth and elders. So like the concept of today, right? That intergenerational work that we're all doing, everybody's in different workshops. That's how you name trauma and be able to heal from it. The naming the trauma, I think, is where a lot of us have fallen by the wayside to this. What's your name? Last name? Nolly? Okay. Mr. Nolly said, we pass off a lot of things that are related to trauma as tradition, especially minority households. So naming it as trauma. No, it wasn't really 10 minutes. Okay. It wasn't really helpful to do it the way we did. It was based on some type of trauma. So I like that piece of it. That was a great point. Affirmations, which I think you guys heard about in the opening session. Family mission statements. So what are we going to do? One of my favorite affirmations for the kids that we come up with that they say before school. Let's see if I can remember it. I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. There's no one like me. So I owe it to God to be me, right? You're made by God. You owe it to him to be who he's created you to be, right? He needed a you to do that. And so you can make up your own family ones. Making room for grief, laughter, and new traditions. Again, thinking about our past traumas as reasons why we don't want people to grieve. Sometimes stuff comes up for us when people grieve for too long. It's time for you to move on, you know. It's been 10 years, right? All of that. So making space for how people grieve, because again, for safety reasons across generations, we've had to shrink ourselves in lots of ways to make sure that we have been safe across time. And so getting rid of those types of expectations and letting people feel all of their feelings. All right, okay. I think we might end up around the right slide at the end. So I want to make 1. So we're going to change from 3 to 1. And so you're going to identify a new tradition to make your family stay. Wait. Did I skip one? Hold on. This. Okay, so this is the first one. So we've talked a lot about some of the negative that could potentially be passed down. So I want us to take just a few minutes to try to identify 1. So replace the number 3 with 1. 1 strength passed down, 1 burden passed down, and then what you want to do with your family based on that. So it can be kind of using the strength that you got, overcoming the burden that you were given, but what do you want your family mantra to be based on that? So everybody has scratch paper or your phone or a journal. Write 1 strength that was passed down through generations of your family. Those are some examples. Faith, we know how to work hard. Kindness, opening our doors to strangers, caring for others. So y'all might be able to come up with that pretty quickly. And then if you have your 1 strength passed down, identify 1 burden, and that should be easier because we've kind of thought about some of that. How am I looking, Brother Washington? 5. Okay. Oh, the survey too. Okay, so this will be our last slide then. I'll wish it because we have to have time for the survey at the end. Okay, so 1 strength, one burden passed down through generations, and then either personal, so for me, so this can say, I am a person who, or for your family, we are a family who lets our kids be free, works on strengthening our faith, works hard, doesn't keep secrets. That's so a simple statement for yourself personally or for your family. Got it. And that'll be our last activity, so we can wrap up. The only other thing I had actually was a closing circle, just for us to share one thing we want to bring out of this session. But this can be what you bring out of it. So hopefully you guys have something written down. I'm going to walk around like I do in my classes and see. One strength, one burden, and then we are a family who, or I am a person who. All right. Okay, so we're going to wrap up. So wherever you were on understanding trauma or generational trauma, I hope you have a better understanding of it, ways that it might show up, and that you're at least willing to continue to examine for yourself ways that it might be showing up for you and your family. Being critical of some of the things that we just believe are natural or traditions or things that we always just do. So at least be willing to ask yourself those questions. I don't have any time for questions. None? No? Okay. He said I don't have any time for questions. So thank y'all so much for participating, though.
All right. Again, we can give a bigger hand than that. Dr. Crutchfield did a wonderful job, And so, as we had stated during the last session, I think we have a scan code coming up on the screen for the survey. And we want to be sure that everyone does a survey, and we're asking that these be done at each session so that we can rate each session. And again, we're looking to see how we can grow, how we can improve, because this hopefully is the first of many, and this is our, I guess, test case just to see how this is being received and what we can do to benefit not only the church, but the community at large. So be sure to want everybody to be sure to take the survey. And if you have any issues getting it up, just raise your hand and I can help you out. Did you have something, Nita? Hold on a second. Hold on a second, because I know everybody think they talk loud enough, but it's being recorded.
Y'all can hear me, can't you? Yeah. See? So when you pull up the survey, it's going to have each workshop on there. So you're really just completing the survey for the workshop you attended. So at the end of the day, you should have 3 surveys that you would have completed. One for the keynote that we had earlier today, one for this one right now, and then the one that you're getting ready to go into after this session or workshop is over. So you only have to complete that section, even though all of them show up. Does that make sense? All right, thank you.
Thank you. And once you complete your survey, you will first, Dr. Crutchfield, you're done? You're good? Okay. So once you complete your survey, you're free to go ahead, take a little break, and then we'll move to your next session. Okay, everybody. I think you're mostly figuring it out, but they are out of order on the screen, so you just need to scroll until you see the appropriate workshop. Oh, the opening session is not on there, but they had the scan code at the opening session, correct? It was on the screen. Right. Oh, okay.
because I believe in the work part of the shop, right? Workshop, work. So you're gonna either be talking to each other, at least journaling for yourselves. It'll be interactive. And so the goals for our workshop are to understand the concept of generational trauma, so understanding, exploring its impact through race, immigration, and financial stress, exploring, so understand, explore, learn tools for mental strength and resilience, so learning some tools, and then brainstorming new traditions to heal. And so when we talk about things like trauma, it can open up a lot of feelings and emotions, and so I want to set the expectation that we're not here to solve or resolve trauma today. It's important to set that expectation. What I'm hoping that you'll take away is an ability to be able to critically think about your experiences in life, recognize some potential patterns in your behavior and your relationships, and maybe just start thinking about a process that will allow you to be able to move beyond potentially some trauma. All right, so very high level overview. You probably will leave with some questions, and that's okay. All right, so is that it? No. So it looks like y'all have the slides up there. I have the HDMI cord in my computer. What'd you say? Okay. I have one additional slide, so let's see. From my laptop. So do y'all just want to control it from up there? Is that what you're saying? Okay. All right. So I have one more slide that won't show up here. So just pause on this one. So the first slide I have that's on my laptop here that y'all can't see is what trauma is. So raise your hand if you know what trauma is. I'm not going to call anybody, so be honest. Be honest if you think you know. All right. Okay, so of the people who raised their hands, raise your hand if you can explain to someone else what trauma is. Okay. All of our counseling people and people are like, maybe, right? So we kind of know what it is. When we think about it, potentially we've experienced it, but we don't always have the ability to be able to explain it to people. And so we're hoping if you do know, if you're familiar with it, or if you're not, you're able to move a step higher after this presentation. So first slide that's not included in these is what is trauma? So you got it? Got it. Oh, okay. Well, great. How does that so? Is this mine? I can move from up here now? Yeah? All right. I'm free. Okay. So, so what is trauma? There are some important things to know about it. Deeply distressing or disturbing. All right? So if I stub my toe up here, that might hurt me, but it's not really deeply distressing or disturbing. Okay? But then also something that is overwhelming your ability to cope, because a lot of us, especially those of us in the room that are Christians, that have been Christians for a while, we have a lot of experience in coping and faith and resilience. And so many things don't rise to the level where we're not able to cope. Trauma experience does rise to that level. So anything you know, anything you've read, studied, experienced is just not enough to be able to deal with whatever this situation or experience is, right? Something that leaves lasting negative effects. If I stumped my toe and got a bruise, that's probably going away after a while, and I'm probably not gonna think about it much afterwards. Typically, traumatic experiences are showing up in some ways in our lives for many years to come, months to come, weeks to come, those types of things. And then it can be single event or repeated things. So, and also emotional or physical. So our bodies can experience physical trauma, most common thing, right? Car accident, some type of physical injury. But what we're focusing on today is sometimes a little bit harder to touch and identify is emotional trauma that's often passed down. So remembering the concepts of deeply disturbing, very overwhelming, lasting effects, those concepts, and then now moving it to generational trauma. So something that's deeply disturbing, overwhelming, lasting effects that has been passed on over generations, right? So that's generational trauma. So you're passed through your family lines through behaviors, beliefs, and systems. So basically anything that has to do with the family, you're passing on information. And so you can be passing on some of those very disturbing, distressing experiences without even knowing it. So it can often be unspoken, where you've been in a family situation, in a family gathering, an event. Sometimes family holidays and events are some of the most stressful situations for people because it brings up stuff that's unspoken. I can't touch it, but I know what's happening in my body right now, being in this room with everyone. And so that's some of the dangers of it. So it influences how we parent, and hopefully we'll get some really good discussion in this room. I do want to bring up one thing that somebody said last time that I thought was phenomenal when we talk about parenting. It influences our emotions, how we feel about things, our relationships, and our self-worth. And I would offer to say that a lot of, for people who are living on the margins in any way, whether that's by race, by socioeconomic status, citizenship status, that self-worth piece is big across generations and how we value ourselves. Okay, so there is a biblical perspective. Of course, we got the preacher in here, so, you know, hopefully I'm right, Brother Ross. But you don't have to be a Bible scholar to know that the Bible is full of stories of generational trauma, right? Experiences that are very disturbing. Think about all the conflict, the deception, all of this stuff, violence. And so in Exodus chapter 20, verse 5, I'll read the whole thing. It says, "You shall not bow down to them or worship them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, punishing the children for the sin of the parents to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me." So I think this is from the 10 Commandments. Obviously, there's a prohibition against idolatry, right? Don't bow down and worship. Because all the stuff that you might experience now, the fourth generation of your family is going to feel it. That's generational trauma, right? In the same vein, though, in Joel 2:25, he talks about the restorative power of God. So God himself, who allows destruction for reasons of idolatry and other things, also offers restoration, healing, and hope for future generations. And so we want to facilitate that healing. And so we're trying to learn practical strategies to be beacons of God's healing for other people. What did I do with my clicker? Here we go. Okay, so race and trauma. So we, again, remember I talked about this being a broad overview. Race and trauma could be 15 workshops in and of itself. Very briefly, the historical trauma from slavery, and I would beg to say it's not necessarily limited to African American people, right? Folks who were enslavers potentially also have some historical trauma, right, from slavery. And so that continued through segregation, and some of you have lived through desegregation. My mom was in a session earlier. She was the first African-American student to go to her high school, right? And then systemic racism, you think about Jim Crow. So that's historic, but if you move to the modern day, we experience similar things, even though we have our freedom, like microaggressions. And so those are things that have you scratching your head like, I think this person just offended me. Like, they insulted me, but I'm not really sure because it doesn't rise to the level that somebody would recognize as a racial slur or a gender-based slur or something like that. Racial profiling still occurs. I'm not arguing with y'all about that. So to the extent that there's some generational trauma around that, it's still happening is the point. Inequality still happens. And so if we can look back and see inequality, it's still relevant today. And so children even can feel stress when it's not named. And so a lot of times we have these ideas about not talking to kids about things. They can feel it even when we think we're hiding it very well. So if it's not named, they can still see it. They are well aware, and sometimes more aware than us sometimes, like the feeling that kids get about different things. All right, so race and trauma, very brief. Let's see. Did I mess up something? Let me come up here. It may have gone off. So I will just get my steps. Okay, so immigration and political anxiety. So I'm not going to talk about politics. Doesn't matter which side of the aisle you are on. Some things that bring about traumatic experiences, though, occur. So we're not talking about the policies. We're talking about what happens when somebody is physically separated from their families. That's it, whether you believe in it or not, okay? So family separation, there's policies around that, but when families are separated, when people lose their language, lose their cultural identity, those things can be experienced as traumatic. Living in fear of deportation, of instability, whether that's financial, physical related to your family, and children are often carrying these types of burdens of fear and confusion, and they show up wherever they go. And they show up in our lives as well. And so I know there's a lot of kind of controversy around these things, but there is literal fear, anxiety, and trauma based on all of this. I'm gonna put this down. Brother Ross, you want to look at this thing? See if I'm doing something wrong. All right, and so this is one that everybody can relate to. Brother Bradford was in my last session, and so I was like, I know y'all are wealthy, so y'all don't ever have financial stress. Is that right, Sister Bradford? She's like, no, that's not right. But the idea of a scarcity mindset, right? So you have generations and generations of people who have been shaped by their experience living below the poverty line. And so whether that is through oftentimes things like redlining, which is basically saying if you are a certain race, you don't have access to this housing, this healthcare, these jobs, right? And obviously we know about wage gaps. And so over generations, these things can then turn into mindsets where I can't really spend a whole lot because I have to have it. I need it because I don't make enough. There's not enough. Or you see people that hoard. There was a really good example in the last session where people saw their grandparents just have everything, right? Like stockpiles of whatever it is, detergent, and some of us potentially experienced some of that trauma during COVID, where it's like you show up in the grocery store and there's nothing there. So when you get something, you have to hoard it or keep it. But that's based out of fear, right? And then financial avoidance. I do not want to think about money. So if I have a credit card, I'm just going to swipe it. It's too overwhelming to think about. I don't care about savings. I don't know what I have in the account. I'm just going to spend. And so a lot of times it's historical, right, or generational, that these types of beliefs are developed. So sometimes there's never enough mindset, so scarcity. There's also some things that appear to be helpful, right, but come from beliefs like we can't trust banks. So raise your hand if you've ever had money like saved somewhere else in the house, like under a bed or in a closet, like right? Well, it's great to save money, right? But if you think back across generations and the messages that you're told is that you can't trust the bank, you better have your own, because when this happens, right? And maybe people are like, well, that's actually true, Sister Crutchfield, what you mean? Like, that's true, right? And so thinking about, though, where those things originate is really one of the goals of talking about trauma. So we talked about race trauma, immigration, political anxiety, financial stress, issues of trauma. And so how do you know then that all of these different types of trauma exist in your own family? And so here are some of those signs. Repeated patterns of dysfunction. Someone is always addicted to something, and I think when we talk about addiction, we think about people who are using illegal substances. We can be addicted to lots of other things. I believe a lot of these kids are addicted to these devices, right? They literally are feeling depressed when they have to not have that stimulation. So could be food, could be shopping, could be relationships, those types of things. But those repeated patterns across generations and generations and generations, you are always going to have in every generation one aunt that is going to be addicted to a substance. Generational patterns of dysfunction or abuse. And so we know intuitively that if you are abused, you're more likely to abuse others. It doesn't show up, though, the same way. So if I was physically abused, I may not physically abuse my child, I may emotionally abuse them or withhold things from them, withhold love and affection from them. So it shows up in different ways. And then silence, that's dysfunctional. If people shut down, kind of give you the cold shoulder, ice you out, you're not ever able to, there's no safe place for you to go to talk about your feelings in your family. And I've witnessed that in a lot of situations that I've been in. So anxiety and hypervigilance in children with no clear reason. And so the best thing I can relate this to is the current practice. And I think so in terms of society, there's been cyclical patterns in terms of generations, in terms of the larger threat. And so right now there's this threat of school shooters, right, and intruders. And so it is the saddest thing I've ever witnessed, but I witness it a lot working on the school board, and those of you who are counselors or work in schools, kids' conversations around lunchtime a lot of times sound like, yeah, well, if somebody comes in, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do that. And so you can be talking about anything you want to talk about at lunch, but you're thinking about an intruder coming into your school, right? And so that hypervigilance, right? There's not really a threat right now, but I feel like, right? So there's not really anything happening in the family, but I feel like, or like I talked about at some of our family events, I'm feeling something, right? I'm anxious, something might go down. Emotional numbing, so these are two extremes. One is on the opposite end, emotional numbing, no feelings, and then the other is explosive anger. So if you can think of a family member, you may be that family member that numbs your emotions. I don't need to feel anything or feel anything too strongly. That sometimes is based in a historical pattern that you were taught and you were told that. And again, when we think about racial trauma, a lot of times people who were louder, who made noise, who spoke up, their end wasn't very great. Murdered, prison, right? Being physically beat and those types of things. And so recognizing sometimes why we shrink ourselves and our feelings is important in terms of what we're passing on. And then the opposite of that is just explosive, uncontrollable anger, which sometimes we probably have seen. Difficulty trusting others or institutions, again, because historically, over generations, some institutions have let us down. Like that's okay to acknowledge and to understand how it might show up. So some of this stuff may show up. We'll talk about some more about other signs as well. And so what do you see if some of that shows up, or if you're experiencing that in your family and your other relationships? Early adult roles. So having to grow up too fast. And so there's a difference in saying, hey, I want you to go and babysit because I want you to know how to change a diaper, right? That's voluntarily teaching your kids some things. But if there's a loss of a parent, sometimes those kids have to step into that role. Or worse, there is a parent present, but they're not assuming parental roles. So you, as a kid, would have to do that. Those types of very disturbing, distressing, long-lasting negative effects could happen. And so we've seen that happen probably in lots of families. Perfectionism. We have some really highly successful people in our congregation, around the world, all of these things, right? And so sometimes a symptom of trauma is that you cannot make a mistake because of whatever violence happened to you, your grandma, your grandfather, when mistakes were made. You've gotten the idea that I've got to be perfect at everything. And so perfectionism, if you feel like you can't make a mistake, that potentially is how this is visited on children and families. And then just shutting down emotionally. Anxiety, guilt, low self-esteem, and that showed up on several slides. So what we believe about ourselves, what we deserve, is definitely impacted over generations in terms of how people have set value for you. And sometimes it's out of their control because, hey, I don't need to overly value myself or make myself bigger if it's going to draw negative attention to me, thinking about our ancestors who have had to struggle with safety. And so kids copy what we're doing. If our behaviors are not healed, then our kids are going to do that. All right, so here's your first opportunity to turn and talk to someone. Y'all three can get together. Brother Ross, they said they were close enough together. I don't know if they are. So I want to give you an opportunity, though, if you don't feel like talking, you're not forced to journal. But I want you guys to think about for yourselves, if you have other family members in here, you can still be honest, right, with family. What unspoken lessons about fear, survival, or money did your family pass down? So we're going to do one question at a time. What unspoken lessons about fear, survival, or money did your family pass down? And so people from last session talked about interacting with police, or again, how to save money, or different things like that. So y'all are turning to talk to someone or journaling yourselves. I'll be walking around to help facilitate. We got 5 minutes on this one. Y'all gonna talk or y'all gonna write? Y'all gonna talk or y'all gonna write? You gonna talk? You gonna journal or you gonna talk? You gonna move in? Okay, she's gonna move down. This is a good discussion. Okay, we got 2 more minutes. 2 minutes. Make sure everybody gets a chance to share. We have 1 more minute. All right, 1 minute for everybody to start to wrap up. 1 minute. Some good discussion. All right, let's bring it back, everybody. Back to the middle. Back to the middle, everybody. I heard some very good discussions, and I volunteered some people to share. So I'll get my voluntold to share. And then if anybody else wants to share, I'll let them. So I'm coming back here, Sister Javette. All right, everybody. Let's, I am a professor by day, so that's just me. I'm calling on people. All right, so again, we've been talking about unspoken lessons about fear, survival of money, or money. And I think some of your discussions got into this second question, so we'll go ahead and wrap that up in it as well. How have these shaped your parenting, your relationships, like your moves in life? So the unspoken lesson and how it's impacted some things. I think I've heard both of those being discussed. So we're going to start with the vet, and then we're going to go to Sister Mathis.
Our group talked about one of the unspoken lessons for survival. We gave examples of our family generally lives close together. So in my group, I really do have a family member, my cousin, our mamas or sisters, we real life cousins. Our grandmother that we share lived on a street, and her siblings, there were 10 of them all together, they all lived within a street or two of each other. They might be a few houses down, but they were all relatively close. And we talked about how some people, we use resources, so what she might have in her house, I might have in my house, and we can interchange that, but subconsciously, our generation has done the same thing. I live a stop sign and a street light from my cousin, and that was not part of the plan when I moved to my house, but it just happens to be where they're close. But if you go the other way, my father and my brother live probably 2 minutes from me. My uncle lives probably another 5 minutes from me. So there are very close, even my husband's brother lives probably 3 minutes away from us. So we're all close to family. And it can be, I gave the example of, I had my brother-in-law call the other day and was like, hey, I need some eggs. And he's gonna pass a Walmart, he's gonna pass 2 Walmarts to come to my house to come get eggs versus going to the store. But it's the fact of, okay, my family's right here and I'm just gonna come get a couple eggs from you, I only need 2. And that's part of survival is that, and I gave the example of something happened and I had to take my kids to Danita's house very quickly. And she's close enough that there was not a trial. It was one of those things, hey, I'm on my way, I gotta bring the girls to you. That would have been harder if she was 45 minutes away. She's only, around 2 corners. So that's one of those things about survival is that if we're in close proximity, we are closer generally, and you kind of have to work harder for those connections the farther people live away from you.
So needing to be close, right, to survive. Go ahead, Sister Mathis.
And we were talking about those unspoken lessons about finances. So with my grandmother, she grew up in she survived an abusive marriage. My grandfather was an alcoholic, so he would spend, he made the money, but he would also spend the money. So they always had to be mindful of where she would put the money. She had to hide the money under different areas around the house. But as a result of that, my mom grew up in that environment. She grew up seeing her mother being concerned about money and them not having, because her father was an alcoholic and he was not very responsible with his finances. So as a mother, she took a different approach. She made the money, But at the same time, because she didn't have growing up, she's a spender, right? And me growing up and seeing her, living through that, and her also being a single mother, I'm the saver in the family. I'm the one that takes care of all of the finances in my family. I'm the one that pays the bills. I have a different mindset because I grew up in a way where I saw her spending a lot. So as a result, it caused me to be the saver in the family. So that's 3 generations right there of financial trauma, financial stress and trauma that passed on from each generation. So we'll see what that transpires into with my kids.
Right. But it's acknowledging, right, that it has shaped your behavior too, right? What you witnessed, what you saw, and even though it's not necessarily touching you, it is, right? So the trauma that my grandmother experienced in her marriage, I'm saving and I don't really want to spend, and I have these certain beliefs about spending from that. Anybody else want to share? Yeah, thank you for being so willing.
Being willing. Hey, I was born in the 50s, so in the 60s, I lived on the West Coast in California. My family personally lived in Lancaster, California, and we had a grandmother and an uncle who lived in Los Angeles. Into the 60s, anybody still familiar with the riots of the Watts area of Los Angeles? Okay, the auntie lived on that same arterial just up the street. That situation changed the whole community in the neighborhood. That changed how we responded to when we saw police come into the area. Even though we were coming in on the weekend, the neighborhood culture was that we're not going to be out after dark. You're not going to go on this street. You see a policeman, turn around and go back. That just polarized the whole community. And how the police handled the situation after that became very different. Now there were barricades. They changed the color of the lights in the neighborhood. Their manner coming towards you was different. So we developed this fear about the police for our community. And we took that fear just from visiting that community back to where we lived.
Yeah, and we have seen commercials about the talk that some people have to have if you have a brown son, a black son, or daughter with that. And so I want us to try to take apart the fact that some things are helpful. It's helpful for you to be safe when you interact with police, but it is also potentially an outgrowth of trauma that you've experienced with police. Right, and so realizing that we have come to grow to believe this is just what you do, this is just what you say, this is et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's how generational trauma is passed down, because it is what you do. But is it something you have to do, right? And so that's something we need to think about, because Lancaster, California is not Dallas, Texas, but we are still sometimes hyper-vigilant in that way. I wanted to bring up a point from the last one where, in terms of our parenting practices, I think there's something that happens, and this is a church group. What do y'all feel like when you see sometimes a kid running up and down the aisle or being unruly or something like that? Sometimes there's something in your body that's like, if that kid don't sit down, you want to grab them, you want to do all of this stuff, right? Well, it's fine for kids to listen. It's absolutely a great thing. But bring it all the way back to the fact that if your kid was unruly, they could be killed, right? If you think about being enslaved, kids can be taken away if they draw attention to themselves. So literally survival that now we have, as a people, been like, that's how you're supposed to act as a kid. Is it really? And so we rob our children of the ability to be children. And so in some of the research that I do around racial justice, there's this whole concept of a black tax, right, or a minority tax, or even economic tax. If you are growing up outside the majority, you have this built-in tax. Raise your hand if you've ever heard that you have to work twice as hard to get ahead. Do you? Should you? And it's no. That's the answer, no. But our ancestors, people before us, literally have had to. And I will say there are still some practices that make it necessary to run in the rat race. But our response, our trauma response, then response to that is to say, you better sit down, little boy, right? See how like that is connected to that? And we want our kids to behave, but there's an extra piece of it. It's drawn out of fear for their safety, right? A couple of you guys want to, I'm gonna come to Danita back here. Oh, you got her? And then I'll get to both of you after her.
I just wanted to speak to your comment about running around in church. And I think that we're predominantly African American in this room, but we have our family cultures. We also have that black church culture. Mm-hmm. So I think those are different cultures woven into our belief systems, because I think we all can agree that our children can run and play and be free and be happy in quote unquote certain settings.
Yeah.
But I think when it comes to the church thing, it's a respect for the house of the Lord. Mm-hmm. It's a respect for where you're coming to worship and give your best to God. So I think for me, when I think that, it's just, and we all have our perceptions of that, but I think for me, that's that other culture that's at work in our minds, and we're trying to make sure that we're raising our children to have that same belief system within that culture system.
Yeah, that's true, but a lot of times it translates to other settings, right? And so the church culture absolutely is a thing, but a lot of times we'll be relaxing at home, but if there's somebody else that is not in the family there, we're gonna cut our eyes real fast at our kids or whatever. And so Brother Bradford gave a really great example of ways that we disadvantage our kids to not wanna speak up, to be silent, but we're asking them to go into corporate America where you better have some initiative and speak up and take the lead and not wait for you to be told to get up and go do something, right? And so that juxtaposition of, hey, shrink yourself so you don't draw attention, you don't not come back home from walking to the store or going to school, doesn't necessarily give our kids those advantages. Go ahead.
I'm not speaking for our group. Ruth is going to do that, but I just wanted to speak to about the children and the generational influence. I am a stickler for about children's behavior, and where it is appropriate, you know, and now that we're talking about it, I kind of figure it's a generational thing with me, in that my grandmother raised 3 of her daughter's children, and I was one of them. And I believe there may have been a fear in me growing up that if I wasn't heard or seen, if I was quiet, makes me choke up, you all.
Yeah, exactly.
That I would have to leave my grandmother. And so I was taught to know how to behave in settings, and particularly in church.
Yeah.
But now that I think about it, that's probably why I'm such a stickler about it, because I was afraid.
And this is the object of today, right? Again, we're not going to heal family trauma in this session, but it is to say and to be willing to step out there and be like, okay, it's fine to behave. That is a good thing, but what's the origin for me? And is it something traumatic that I don't want to continue to pass on? So thank you for being brave and sharing that. Go ahead.
But I think the other thing is a reflection of, if my kid is acting up, I'm reflected as a bad parent.
Yeah.
So the fear of being projected as a bad parent is an influence.
Because a lot of times in history, parents were held accountable for kids that were unruly. Oh, you don't have your kids, so hey, you're going to be the one strung up, or you're going to be the one locked up. Yes. Go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Y'all, hold up. How am I doing on time? We got about 35 minutes. Okay, and I'll stay here. I know some of us are sticklers about. She didn't get through all her slides, but I want to stay here while we're having this good discussion.
I just wanted to share, because it really made me think with what we pass down to our children. And I thought about my son.
my 30-year-old son, and I did pass something down to him. When I was 19, me and Brother Bercy, we were together, and he had just picked me up from work. And all of a sudden, we get on the freeway, and then lights start behind us. So these two cop cars pull up behind us. This is my first time ever experiencing racism, right? So they pull up behind us, and I saw Brother Bercy was like really nervous. And I said, why are you nervous? They're just gonna give you a ticket, or so, were you speeding? Yeah, I was speeding. I said, well, why are you nervous? They're just gonna give you a ticket. He said, no, they're not gonna just give me a ticket. I said, what do you mean? He was like, I got some other tickets I haven't paid, right? So I was like, okay, I'm 19. Okay, he's 19. I don't have a driver's license, so guess what? You know, what's gonna happen to me? So of course, two white cops, they come up, and they do their little thing, ask for the driver's license, ask for the insurance, and he gives it to them and everything. They check it, and they tell him to step out. He steps out. The other white cop takes him to the car, and I'm watching this, you know, takes him to the other car and slams him on this car. And then I heard one of them say, oh, so you think you're white, because my husband, he always wore a baseball cap, but he wore it towards the back. And they slung his hat back around. And I heard him say, so you think you're white, that's why you're wearing your thing, and slammed him, put him in the car. In the car, they came back to me, and he says to me, where's your license? I said, I don't have a driver's license, sir. He said, well, where's your ID? So of course I had ID, he checked it and everything. He said, oh, so it looked like you're walking tonight. And this was like after 9 o'clock. I just got off from work. Don't you know they made, and we were on the freeway. Because I was black, they made me walk. They said, look like you're gonna be walking home. Then, of course, they towed his car. So that was a fear for me.
Yeah.
So my black son knows today how to deal with that, you know. So yeah, he got the little, you know, you're black. If you get pulled over, you keep both hands on the steering wheel. You make sure your license is out and da-da-da-da-da. But I passed that down because of the fact of what I went through, or what I experienced.
And so again, but it's not irrational to want your children to have safe interactions with people, right? That is okay. But you are able to acknowledge. And so we're going to talk about this in a bit. It's okay for you to acknowledge that with your kids. Don't let mommy's irrational fear of this, or because of what I experienced, cause you to fear police. This is just safety, like if you put on a seatbelt, have your license and all this stuff. But a lot of times we're passing on the fear piece of it instead of, hey, this is best practices. So last one, guys, so we gotta move on.
Just to piggyback on Sister Jean, you know, when we were little, you know, back in the days, if we would talk in church or pop gum, all my mom had to do was just give us that look, and we know what she meant.
I don't have the look. I don't know.
Yeah, just give us that look, that eye.
Got to figure out how to do that.
And well, because you have to behave in church. You're in church, so you have to pay attention, and you know, you play after you leave church.
Yeah.
So.
But even beyond church, right? So remember, keeping your kids close to you is actually a survival mechanism, right? And making sure they're not getting out to get the eye of an officer or someone else like that. So, okay. I said last one, but this will be the last one.
Okay, thank you. This is for our group.
Okay.
The survival tools that we shared coming up, one of our sisters said, based on how she grew up, she was taught, have your own, don't depend on the man, even though he finds you. We also said, one of the sisters said she was not taught about money, and as a result has become a workaholic. Believes that she has to continue to work in order to remain independent. So I personally said, I can remember growing up, I had one pair of shoes for church, one pair for school. And when my school shoes wore out in the rain, my family would put cardboard in those shoes. My teacher, whom I loved, would always take those shoes, put them on the radiator, let them get dry. And she always gave me a special project to do so that the other kids wouldn't see that my socks and shoes were getting dry. So that's taught me compassion for other people over the years.
Right.
And then you talk about things that weren't said. I didn't go to my parents and say, I need some shoes, but I felt deeply that other kids had them and I didn't.
Right.
And then we also said things like always be independent by working too much.
Those are all good things. If we have time, we're going to come back to this last question. We have something similar in terms of an activity that we might be able to get to. All right, so you guys mentioned some of this and what you were talking about already, how this stuff is passed down. You guys, lots of you talked about what you're sharing with your kids, etc. Through family stories. Even if you haven't experienced it, you heard about what happened to Uncle so-and-so or great-grandma, you name it, right? And then traditions. A lot of things that we pass off as traditions are rooted in trauma. It's just what we do. It's just, oh, well, you know, this is what we do as a family, but it's not necessarily something that is a healthy tradition per se, all right? So the absence of traditions as well, because there is too much pain around a certain thing, whether that's a graduation, a holiday, etc. And then through modeled behaviors, what you do, not all the times what you say, but what you do is a lot of times what will impact. And in Sister Matthew's case, she did some of the opposite. So it's not necessarily the case that kids will do exactly what you're doing. They may do something different, but it still is based originally on that trauma, right? So sometimes they're adaptive, but a lot of times it's hyper adaptive, right? I can't because of this, instead of just naturally, I like to save money. It's a natural thing. No, it's because this person didn't save, and I don't ever want to be without or be experiencing that. All right, emotional suppression. And so I waded kind of in the water on this one, so I'm going to say this. I know we got a preacher back there, so, correct me, if I'm stepping out of line here. But I think sometimes we've even adopted things that are based on generational trauma as next to godliness, right? And so think about our posture in worship and how some of us feel emotional, feel different things, but we suppress our emotions and we're like, oh, I got to be bottled up, right? That is not necessarily, it could be just, I'm not really like that or whatever. But if you experience emotions and you have issues necessarily expressing it, or you feel like, hey, I want to shout, I don't need a shout. Sometimes that is, again, the louder people were searched out, hung, killed, jailed, right? And so that generationally translates into, I better keep these emotions in check. There is the meme, right, of the angry black woman or angry black man, and it's not just out there to make fun, it's literally your demise if you're showing too much of that emotion or expression. So sometimes, again, things that we think we're just doing because it's appropriate, is it really, and what is it rooted in? Epigenetics, I think, in the opening session, she talked about a lot, that holistic healthcare, et cetera. I know it's some of the stuff we eat too, right? So we want to be honest, but there really is a stress and trauma response as one of the factors of why we are disproportionately more likely to have certain diseases. So when I talked about the tax, right, of being born into a certain skin, it is literally changing how our genes react to the environment that we're in. And then again, there's still societal structures that can reinforce oppression in today's time. So faith is a source of resilience. And so this might be controversial to say in a church, but faith is a source of resilience. It doesn't say that it is the source of resilience. And so I think sometimes Christians struggle in dealing with trauma because we think that there shouldn't be any trauma if we have faith, right? So faith is a source. It's not the source. So you obviously have biblical examples of family cycles that have been broken by being obedient. Through prayer and fasting and service, we know we can grow closer to God and build some of that resilience. But remember what trauma is from that very first slide. All coping goes out the window because it's so overwhelming. So where you typically have faith, and that's enough. That's enough to get through a hard situation at work, stressed about it, but my faith is going to help me ride that wave. Trauma is something that's above and beyond just something that you can do with only faith. So our church community, we have a lovely one here, emotional safety. But think about the way to use faith is just to say that whatever the trauma was, whether it's generational and it didn't necessarily happen directly to you, or whether it did happen directly to you, you are not what happened, you are who God says you are. Right? And so that is how you're dealing with it, but it's not to say that you don't need other things. All right, so here are some practical things in addition to faith as a source of resilience. Talk openly with kids about hard topics in age-appropriate ways. How many people were told by anybody, just do what I say? And we probably said it, right? Just do what I say because I said it. Not, let's get into the hard topic of why it is I need you to behave this way. And so that is very practical, but also very hard. And so we laughed about it, but I want you to realize a lot of times it's based on kids that ask too many questions get in trouble outside of the house, right? So it is the thing that we've adopted to say, be quieter, kind of just go along, accept stuff, et cetera, et cetera. And some of us have already unlearned that and have moved beyond that, et cetera. But that is the vein of kind of walk in line, stay, boy, don't step out of line, that kind of thing. And some of us, at a certain age, were raised not right. So again, and that's based on safety a lot of times, right? Fear of violence. And so that is not wrong. It is just a traumatic response, right? So it's not wrong to want to be safe. So I want to make that clear to you all. You don't have to judge your parents and grandparents and all of that for wanting you to be safe, but it is an issue if we're going to continue to allow that traumatic experience to dictate the fact that we can't speak up, right? Okay, and so modeling emotional regulation and self-care, we have to show it. Again, people will do what we say. And I like to talk to myself in these workshops. So I laugh about self-care. I'm a social worker. I teach on self-care. We went around the table recently talking about our hobbies. And so we asked the kids, well, what do you think daddy's hobby is? Mommy's hobby? You like fishing, whatever. Malika likes art. What's mommy's hobby? Taking care of the family. Like, that's sad, right? That's pretty sad. And it is, my mom was here earlier in the first session. She was a single mom. When she got home, she was pretty much going to be going to sleep to start the day over, right? And I would consider myself somebody that loves vacations, loves time to relax, all of this stuff, but it's ingrained to, you just give of yourself, and it's self-care, they made that word up, right? Whatever, right? They didn't. And so again, but we're having to model that. I don't want Malika to have to grow up and say, I'm not going to relax. And so if we flip it and think about, I'm doing this and it's selfless and I have to take care of the family, what do you want your children to be able to have the freedom to do? You have to have that freedom to show them that and give them permission to be free to do that. So therapy, obviously, today, there are all kinds of therapy. You can get therapy online. Obviously, we have a great life management center here, and there's a lot of work that that team does here. So please do that. It's an actual profession, right? So if you would go to an interior designer to ask them to help you do something, or a doctor or a lawyer, please seek therapy when needed. And then naming trauma. So this is, again, this issue where we've been told not to speak up. I think Sister Williams was also talking about, I really felt this, but I didn't want to say anything to my parents about it. Naming it, right? You really can't start healing unless you say, this has happened in our lives, in our area, like the Watts riot. This has happened in LA. And so this is what we're going to continue to see. And so having to name it in our congregation, in our immediate family, right, in our lives. And so saying, this didn't start with me, and it can end with me. So hoarding behavior because I have a fear or a scarcity mindset, so I need everything, that can stop with me. And so I think obviously using spiritual healing, but also using therapy and setting emotional boundaries. So if you think about everybody being in a boat and folks rowing in the same direction, and the little person in the back that's either not rowing or doesn't want to row in the same direction, we need you to stop. We need you to get on board with us. And so setting some boundaries with people, it's okay to set emotional boundaries with folks once you decide where you want to be. All right, this is a really great slide. So we've heard from Brother Simpson in some of his sermons. Today, Brother Ross mentioned it, this intergenerational dialogue, right? And so that's going to take a lot of work from a lot of different generations of people who are not necessarily used to sharing all kinds of stuff, and then children who are just like, I know everything, I can Google it. No. You need to be listening, right? But these intergenerational dialogues between youth and elders sharing wisdom. I walked in last night to the one of the most beautiful things I've seen in a while in our family. So Malaika and JC have 2 cousins in town from Louisiana, and they're all sitting on my mom's couch, and she's going through conversation cards with them. And she's finding out stuff about, and I'm trying not to get choked up, about the kids that I don't even know. And they're finding out stuff about her, how she integrated her high school in the 1970s and things like that. And so here's some trauma that grandma might have experienced, and she didn't label it as trauma, but she asked about their safe places, right? And so my little boy said, I'm his safe place. And so I could probably guess that, but now through that intergenerational dialogue, I'm really gonna be his safe place, right? I'm really gonna be a safe place. But that is something, as the parent and the hustle and bustle and get your clothes on, got to get to school, whatever, she has that space. And so it can be members of your church community. It can be older adults anywhere that can pour into our kids, to ourselves, so we can make sure that we're naming things, breaking the silence, even while we honor traditions. So I think in the first session, she talks about affirmations, family mission statements, all of those things, because you have to have it in front of you. Another thing I think in terms of breaking down traditions is making room for grief. And I think that's important to say. And so I'm really, really pleased with the grief ministry here. And so I know I've even referred some of my own family members to it, because unfortunately sometimes in the Christian tradition, like, you need to be all right. You've been grieving for a month, like it's time to move on, right? Right, your faith should have moved you on. And so what people don't realize about that is you need to give people space, because in 10 years, it's going to hurt me just as much for the person that I lost, but I've learned some strategies to be able to deal with it. So it's still gonna be us making room for that. Laughter, again, having a boisterous laugh. Sometimes that brings up a feeling in us, like, too loud. Again, historically, like, we don't need people to find us if we're hiding. If we're literally hiding, going back to Harriet Tubman, why are you laughing so loud? You're gonna get us killed. Literally, and passed down and down and down and down to where some of us get a feeling in our bodies of a lack of safety when people are being loud. But it is not necessarily just historic. Loud, lots of music, boisterous barbecues. The whole concept of Karen started with someone having the police called on them for having a good time, being loud, having laughter, having music, having fun. And so it's important to say that, yes, some of these safety fears are still there, but that goes back to that legacy work, the last slide where we're talking about naming what it is we're talking about and then talking openly about it. Yeah, there still is a lack of safety in some ways. It's okay to talk about that, as opposed to just being fearful and not explaining to people what that fear is about. Alrighty, so it is, how am I doing on time? 10 minutes, perfect. Okay, so we will end here. I have one more kind of activity, but we'll end here. So This is something you can write down for yourselves and then share with the neighbor. And so instead of 3 strengths, I want you to change that to 1. So we talked about a lot of kind of some of the negative things passed down, but 1 strength passed down through generations of your family. So you're going to write that thing down. You're also going to write down 1 burden that you want to transform. Is it a money mindset that was a burden? Is it secrecy that was a burden? We're not going to tell, even though Dad is acting this way. We're just not going to say anything. Is it scarcity, where I either have to hoard, or I don't think I really deserve to have all of this stuff, whatever that looks like. So 1 strength, 1 burden, and then your own personal family statement, your own personal statement. I am a person who, or for your family, we are a family who. So we are a family who tries to strengthen our faith. We are a family who doesn't shame each other, right? So you guys are gonna finish up with this. So 1 strength passed down, 1 burden, and then your own personal statement for yourself or a family statement. So take some time to write that. And then if anybody wants to share, great. And then I think we should have, if we do 2 minutes on this, we can ask some questions. And I'm gonna run low. Look, let me take this mic away so you won't stop me. No, I'm just playing. I'm just playing. Brother Washington, when I looked at him in the last session, I was like, do I have time for questions? He was like, I have the mics now. So let's do 2 minutes on this final activity, where you can think of anything you want to be, with the strength or overcoming a burden that you want to change. Write it down and then discuss it. So you want to have your own statements. So you can put it in your phone, or you can write it. Some of you already have your own journals. Or if you want to have it in your head, it's not too late. Even if you are just you in your house, you can have a personal statement. Let you guys have 2 more minutes to write this down. This is just one for today. You can do this any number of times. It might be a good idea to do this with your family, with your kids, your spouse. Huh? With your family. Oh, your dog. Okay, 1 more minute on this one. All right. So I'll show you guys how this works. This is an example of what one might sound like. In our family, a strength is our family connection. We are really, really bonded family, showing up for each other all the time for anything. You can always count on family, and I don't take that for granted. It's not like that in every family. One of the burdens with that, we talked about boundaries. Very, very I guess, thin boundaries, right? When you're very close to family, sometimes that those lines are blurred. And so, no, we're not going to do this. So one of the things around family that sometimes happen is family doesn't always listen to the rules that you set. So think about family reunions. Anybody ever been in a family reunion, right? Whatever. So we've had like decades and decades of family reunions, right? And because we love family, we show up for family or whatever. And some of y'all might be like, yes, this sounds like our family. Family doesn't always pay what they're supposed to pay to come into the reunion. See, where I was like, yes, preach, right? All of that stuff, right? And so we have had, loving people in the family at this generation, a generation above mine, to say, oh, but it's family. We still want them to come. And people my age are like, I have to pay, so everybody else needs to pay too, right? All of that, right? But again, it's the strength of family love, but also the burden of, hey, set boundaries. People have to pay money. So now my generation is in charge of the reunion. And I'm happy to report that our last family reunion, everybody paid for the reunion. Everybody paid for the reunion, right? Because again, if you ascribe to being part of this family, you're going to respect the family enough to be able to pay to come in, right? So it's not just about being in charge of people or whatever. So very simple thing, but you can see how that leads to resentment. When people know, oh, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, whatever. Especially if it's not for lack, right? If people actually can't afford something. It's just, you're going to pay for everything else but the reunion because it's just family and you're going to take advantage, right? Simple example. And so you may have things like that related to family or whatever your strength burden is to overcome, but hopefully the main goal of the session was for you to think about some of what you know to be best practices, and this is just right, and this is just the way it's supposed to be, et cetera, et cetera. And Sister Jackson had a great epiphany, right? Well, but where does it stem from, right? And so I want us to think about that in a lot of the behaviors, what we tell ourselves, what we tell our people in our family, our kids, and be able to say, where is it really coming from, and does it need to be a healed part of me, right? So do I have time for questions? You do. Okay, all right. I like you better than Brother Washington, I'm just saying. I'm just joking. No, I have time for questions. So does anybody have any questions or final thoughts? I had another slide, but we won't have time to do this closing circle, and I think y'all have done enough in terms of being able to have kind of a carry forward from this. No questions, final thoughts? Okay. Well, I appreciate y'all's participation. Look, you get in what you get out what you put in. So that is it. Let's see. Okay.
So that we can do the survey. We need everybody to do a survey.
Brother Moore, you're up there. Sorry you have to listen to this twice. Thank you. So yeah, I think Brother Moore is up there working on getting it up, so you'll be able to do that. Oh, so I think what Brother Lane is saying is if you have it from last time, the QR code, you can still go back to this session on your screen and still submit for that. But probably a lot of y'all submitted it the last time, so you need to have it pulled back up again. Hopefully it'll show up here. All right, so it's up. So please support the planning team and letting them know how to improve and your thoughts.
And everyone can go down to the basement and get a grab and go lunch.
Everyone can go down to the basement and get a grab and go lunch.